Chapter 873. Ning Qing naturally didn't know that Manjuran had not only escaped back to the Grand Essence Sea but also restored his corporeal body. He disguised himself as a man in embroidered robes and rented a new cave abode. After rearranging the cave abode's restrictions, he entered the quintessential world. Ning Qing then transplanted the withering Tao fruit tree into the true spirit world. Ning Qing not only placed more than 100,000 spirit crystals under the Tao fruit tree but also left several pieces of law soil under it. After entrusting Chasing Bull to look after the Tao fruit tree, Ning Qing came out of the true spirit world and took out the incomplete spiritual consciousness cultivation method he obtained from the exchange meet. Carefully opening the restrictions on this broken cultivation method, Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness seeped in. A moment later, a series of messages appeared in Ning Qing's memories. The Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll, the number 1 spiritual will cultivation technique under the Chaos Realm. The opening sentence startled Ning Qing. What was this Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll? He actually dared to say that it was the number 1 spiritual will cultivation technique beneath the primal chaos. The creation of this cultivation method was inspired by the North Sea. The North Sea came out of the Kuan, and it was thousands of miles wide. Even after transforming into a peng, who knows how many thousands of miles it will cover. Everyone knew that the rock was huge and could fly millions of miles. However, few people knew that when the rock opened its mouth, it could swallow more than a few thousand miles. Spiritual will is an intangible thing, and the rock can swallow the heaven and earth. How can an intangible spiritual will be inferior to the rock of the northern underworld? A certain darkness devours gods, devours the divine will of heaven and earth, devours the sea of consciousness of all living beings, and devours all things incorporeal. However, the sun waxes and wanes, and the moon waxes and wanes. No matter how strong the technique was, it would still have its flaws. If one sea of consciousness was not strong, there was no benefit in cultivating it, and it would explode after a long time. Even if one sea of consciousness is strong, he can only devour the sea of consciousness of other cultivators. He can't last long. I am very regretful. The ignorant and foolish see the Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll as the world's most vicious. It's a pity that I can't devour all the ignorant and foolish people. After a while, Ning Qing finally put down this incomplete cultivation method, and was secretly shocked in his heart. He was sure that the person who created this Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll was a paranoid person who viewed the lives of others as ants. This Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll was simply a transformation technique, grand technique, or a star-sucking cultivation method. However, unlike the transformation technique, grand technique, the former devoured internal force, while the Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll devoured the cultivator's spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness. Others said that this cultivation method was vicious, but it wasn't wrong. This cultivation method was indeed vicious. Think about it, others had painstakingly cultivated for countless years, only to have their spiritual sense devoured in a single exchange with you, and even their sea of consciousness was destroyed. It would be strange if anyone liked this kind of cultivation method. Moreover, this Dark Nether Devouring Spirit Scroll had flaws, just like the great art of transformation. Swallowing too much spiritual sense would cause one sea of consciousness to explode. If this problem was not solved, no matter how powerful this cultivation technique was, no one would dare to cultivate it. No wonder someone would sell this cultivation technique after obtaining it. Ordinary people really wouldn't dare to cultivate this kind of thing. To be honest, Ning Qing did not have a favorable impression of the great art of transforming cultivation. Even though the creator of this technique gave it a nice-sounding name of the Dark North Divine Technique, the principle was the same. Through the method of parasitism, it absorbed the internal energy of others. Judging from the cultivation method of this cultivation method, the cultivator who created this cultivation method was indeed a genius among geniuses. But to say that it was the number 1 spiritual sense cultivation method under the primal chaos realm, Ning Qing didn't think much of it. Maybe the person who created this cultivation method eventually died because of this cultivation method. Because he swallowed too much spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness, he ended up exploding his own sea of consciousness. But in any case, Ning Cheng admired the theory of this cultivation method. Swallowing the spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness of a cultivator, Ning Cheng disdained to do it. This cultivation method violated the moral bottom line in Ning Cheng's heart. However, Ning Cheng saw many attacking methods from this cultivation method, some of which even contained great spirit techniques. Moreover, Ning Cheng also felt very interested in the other theories of this cultivation method. Although the Dark Nether-devouring spirit scroll mainly talked about swallowing the spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness of a cultivator. But it proposed to swallow the spiritual sense of heaven and earth, to swallow all invisible things. Both were methods to increase one's spiritual consciousness, which made Ning Cheng very interested. This meant that this cultivation method could increase one's spiritual consciousness by swallowing some spiritual fruits and spiritual grasses that had an effect on one's spiritual consciousness. One could also strengthen one's spiritual consciousness by swallowing all the invisible and invisible thoughts in the universe. This kind of invisible and invisible thoughts included the thoughts released by various treasures, as well as some mind power that automatically formed in the starry sky. This was similar to absorbing spiritual chi for cultivation, which was equivalent to opening up another way to cultivate one's spiritual consciousness. It was no longer the same as absorbing starry sky spiritual chi to advance one's spiritual consciousness and sea of consciousness. Instead, it was through spiritual consciousness cultivation, which allowed one's spiritual consciousness to advance on its own. Ning Cheng decided to use his own deductions and combine them with the Dark Nether-devouring spirit scroll to evolve his own spiritual consciousness attacks. It would be best if he could create a new cultivation method for spiritual consciousness cultivation. Because the Dark Nether-devouring spirit scroll was incomplete, it only had the first 4 levels. The first level was spiritual consciousness transformation, the second level was sea of consciousness mutation, the third level was starry sky sea of consciousness, and the fourth level was sea of consciousness formless. Ning Cheng's sea of consciousness had already transformed into a starry sky's sea of consciousness. Ning Cheng didn't know if his sea of consciousness had mutated or not. However, he knew that his sea of consciousness had evolved into a starry sky sea of consciousness after going through the Nirvana Thunder Tribulation. As for the sea of consciousness becoming formless, it was a sign that the starry sky sea of consciousness had advanced once again. Once the sea of consciousness became formless, even if one didn't use a spiritual consciousness cultivation method, one could still transform it into a world when fighting against an enemy. At that time, the enemy could walk into the sea of consciousness and be slaughtered by you. Ning Cheng didn't care about the sea of consciousness becoming formless. A real powerhouse wouldn't walk into the other party's sea of consciousness. As for ordinary opponents, Ning Cheng didn't need to let the other party walk into his sea of consciousness. What he cared about was that once the sea of consciousness became formless, his sea of consciousness would increase by leaps and bounds. It would even form a faint connection with the surrounding starry sky, which was the true meaning of formless. However, Ning Cheng felt very interested in the several spiritual consciousness spirit techniques within the Dark Nether-devouring spirit scroll. Spiritual consciousness chop. This was a spirit technique that could directly attack the other party's sea of consciousness when fighting against an enemy. This was completely different from when he used spiritual consciousness thorns and spiritual consciousness blades to sneak attack the other party's sea of consciousness. This was an open and aboveboard attack on the other party's sea of consciousness, which could not be resisted. The spiritual consciousness chop turned into continuous mountain-shaped blade lights, which could cut through several or even dozens of spiritual consciousness blade lights. The specific number of spiritual consciousness blade lights that could be cut out depended on the strength of the opponent and the degree of control over the spiritual consciousness chop. Dark Consciousness Storm. This was a spiritual consciousness spirit technique that combined the laws of space. This spirit technique required one to control the laws of space and combine one's spiritual consciousness with the laws of space to attack the opponent. However, this wasn't an attack on the other party's sea of consciousness, but a physical attack. In this dark consciousness storm, the opponent's spiritual consciousness would be suppressed and directly sucked into the spiritual consciousness storm space. Ning Qing rented a cave in the Grand Essence Ruins public square for a year. However, he didn't go into secluded cultivation, nor did he rush to transform his spirit essence. After mastering the spiritual consciousness chop and dark consciousness storm, Ning Qing began to learn artifact crafting. He already had a lot of materials on him, plus the materials he bought with points. Even if he continued to craft artifacts for a year or two, he would have more than enough materials. As for alchemy, he would only refine a few furnaces of medicinal pills when crafting artifacts got boring. In the Grand Essence Ruins quest hall, a white-robed woman stared at one of the big quest screens with red eyes. She had been standing there staring for nearly an hour without moving an inch. This was a wanted mission screen, and there was a very eye-catching mission on it. Capture lifeless poison hand O Yendu, reward 2 million points. The reward for capturing the heartless monk Ju Mei was also 2 million points. Capture heartless monk Ju Mei, reward 2 million points. But the premise was that they had to be alive. One could say that the reward for this quest was almost comparable to the Grand Essence Spirit Thunder quest. However, many people knew that they could only look at this quest. If they really wanted to catch these two notorious people, they would have to die. Fortunately, the reward for providing information about this quest was 500,000 points, which was just too generous. Almost everyone thought that this quest must have come from the Grand Essence Ruins public square's cave. After all, these two people had attacked the Grand Essence Ruins public square's cave before. Because of this, the reputation of the Grand Essence Ruins public square's cave didn't decline. Instead, it rose to a whole new level. Many cultivators' confidence in the Grand Essence Ruins public square's cave rose again because of this quest. For a time, the Grand Essence Ruins public square's cave couldn't even be rented with a silver card. Ruxue, how come you're here? I was just about to go back and bring you here. A clear and pleasant voice rang out beside the white-robed woman. The white-robed woman looked back and saw an equally pretty female cultivator in blue robes. Her eyes flashed with surprise and she called out, Yenji. But then, her eyes dimmed, and she even lowered her head. Yenji had just returned from a mission in the Grand Essence Ruins. She originally planned to go to the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City and bring Nalan Ruxue. But now that she saw Nalan Ruxue here, she naturally felt happy. But when she saw Nalan Rushue's expression, she understood what happened and quickly asked, what happened? Let's go somewhere else. After Nalan Ruxue finished speaking, she walked out of the quest hall first. In a rest stop in the Grand Essence Ruins, Yenji's face turned pale as she listened to Nalan Rushue's words. Her entire body trembled. She had excellent qualifications and was the kind of person who cultivated hard. Coupled with the opportunities she encountered in the Grand Essence Ruins, she advanced from the heaven-seated realm to the life and death realm in just a few years. According to her original plan, she would bring Nalan Ruxue from the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City to the Grand Essence Ruins. Then, the two of them would do the quest together. Once her cultivation advanced to the Eternal Realm, her attainments in the Tao of Arrays would also improve. At that time, she could perfect the teleportation array under the Grand Essence Sea and teleport back to find Ning Qing. But she never expected to hear the bad news about Ning Qing from Nalan Rushue's mouth. Ning Qing also went to the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City to find her. In the Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City, Ning Qing took Nalan Ruxue to the Grand Essence Ruins. But when he went into seclusion in the Grand Essence Ruins public square cave, lifeless Poison Hand and heartless monk joined forces and killed him. The Grand Essence Ruins public square cave had issued a high reward for the two people who attacked the cave. But unfortunately, they hadn't even seen the shadow of the two. Seeing Yenji's pale face and trembling body, Nalan Ruxue suddenly felt a little lost. Compared to Yenji's feelings for Ning Qing, her feelings for Ning Qing didn't seem to be pure. Chapter 874. Wuxia, I'm leaving. Yan Ji stood up. Although her face was still pale, her tone seemed to have calmed down. Nalan Wuxia also stood up. She had been with Yan Ji for a long time and knew her very well. Yan Ji had an independent personality and was very assertive. From a certain point of view, Yan Ji was much stronger and more independent than her. Even if she had lived alone in the starry sky for many years, she still couldn't compare to Yan Ji. She also knew that Yan Ji had decided to kill lifeless Poison Hand and Heartless Monk. However, she didn't try to persuade Yan Ji. She knew that she couldn't persuade Yan Ji. Yan Ji always planned before taking action. She would never act impulsively. Even if she wanted to kill these two people, she wouldn't do it immediately. I'm leaving too. You have to be careful. I got the inheritance. After I reach Dao sculpting in the future, I will come back here. Nalan Wuxia just told Yan Ji to be careful. Since Ningcheng had fallen, she wouldn't stay on the periphery of the Grand Essence Ruins public square. She wanted to finish her own things. If Yan Ji hadn't killed these two people after she reached Dao sculpting, she would take action. After going into seclusion for a year, Ningcheng heard about what happened a year ago. He guessed that Heartless Monk would come to find him, but he didn't expect that he would actually go. It seemed that it was always good to prepare for a rainy day. After leaving the cave, Ningcheng wore the mask he had refined and came to the quest hall. He had refined artifacts for a year, but he could only refine low-rank spirit artifacts. Because it was a mask-type weapon that he refined himself, ordinary Dao sculpting cultivators wouldn't be able to see his appearance. Even cultivators above Dao sculpting wouldn't be able to see through him if they didn't use their spiritual consciousness to scan him. He was just an inconspicuous rogue cultivator on a mission. Therefore, there shouldn't be any experts specifically looking for him. What's more, there weren't many experts above Dao sculpting in the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Ningcheng quickly found that he was wrong. A year ago, there weren't many experts above the Dao sculpting realm here. In fact, there were only a few of them. This time, as soon as he entered the quest hall, he saw 7 or 8 powerful auras. Even if he didn't use his spiritual consciousness to scan them, he knew that these experts had stronger cultivation than Dao sculpting cultivators. Ningcheng took in a deep breath and converged his aura. Then, he looked at the big screen with many ordinary cultivators. It didn't take long for Ningcheng to find the quest to capture the Heartless Monk and Lifeless Poison Hand. Ningcheng didn't care about the mission. Since these two dared to attack a cave in the Grand Essence Ruins public square, it made sense for them to be wanted by the Grand Essence Ruins public square. However, Ningcheng soon did not think so, because he saw the reward for the two of them. It was 2 million points for each of them. Moreover, they wanted them alive. Even those who provided information about these two people would be able to obtain 500,000 points, which made Ningcheng's heart suddenly skip a beat. He was just an insignificant rogue cultivator here. Even if someone sneak attacked him and killed him, the Grand Essence Ruins public square's cave would never pay such a high price to capture these two people. The only possibility was that this wasn't a task issued by the Grand Essence Ruins public square cave. The G in the mission, not the mission. The mission. And the two. Tian, only. Only, Cheng, dead, and the king. And, Su. Only, the two, it, he. He. And had. Only, he. Ningcheng started to hypothesize that if this wanted person was after him, or if this person wanted to know if he had truly fallen or not, then looking for the living lifeless Poison Hand and the Heartless Monk would be excusable. But who would pay such a high price to find him? The most likely suspects were lifeless Poison Hand and the Heartless Monk. But these two were wanted. Apart from them, there was only Beyond Heaven path. He had only offended a few people since coming to the Grand Essence Ruins. Ning Cheng also knew that Beyond Heaven Path wouldn't dare to look for him through the heartless monk and lifeless poison hand. What's more, Beyond Heaven Path didn't have the strength to do so. Ning Cheng walked to a corner of the quest hall and asked for a cup of ordinary spiritual tea. He picked up the spiritual tea and took a sip unconsciously. Just as he was about to put down the spiritual tea, he saw a man with a striped face walk into the quest hall. Ninth Prince. Ning Cheng quickly determined that this person wasn't the Ninth Prince. This person's face looked similar to the Ninth Prince, Manjuran. He had a few lines on his face and looked a bit similar. But he definitely wasn't Manjuran. Thinking of Manjuran, the leaf covering Ning Cheng's thoughts suddenly opened up, and Ning Cheng's heart suddenly became as clear as a mirror. The Grand Essence C's Ninth Prince had returned. Only his father had the courage to come up with so many points to find Ning Cheng's whereabouts. Since the Ninth Prince's father had such courage, it naturally wasn't just to avenge the Ninth Prince. Rather, it was because of his five-colored star splitter arrow. Manjuran knew about the power of his five-colored star splitter arrow. Presumably, Manjuran would tell this news to his father, which meant that his father had come looking for the five-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Cheng didn't know the cultivation of the Ninth Prince's father. But Ning Cheng could guess that his father was definitely a super powerhouse. Facing such a powerhouse, an eternal cultivator, looking for him, Ning Cheng's heart suddenly turned cold. He felt sure that once any news about him leaked out, he wouldn't be able to escape to the Grand Essence ruins. Ning Cheng forced himself to calm down. He slowly took in a deep breath and thought about what he should do. Although the man with the striped face wasn't Manjuran, he definitely had a relationship with Manjuran. Maybe he was Manjuran's brother. After drinking the spiritual tea, Ning Cheng stood up. Since the Ninth Prince's father had put a bounty on his head, he couldn't come here wearing a mask again. If he appeared with a mask-type weapon, people wouldn't recognize him at first glance. But at the same time, he would also attract the most suspicion. An hour later, Ning Cheng entered the depths of the Grand Essence ruins. He took off the mask and changed his appearance in a straightforward way. Under Ning Cheng's deliberate actions, the original contours of his face turned into an ordinary face. The first impression that this face gave people was that it had to do missions in the Grand Essence ruins over a long period of time. On his exposed neck, there was even a scar left behind by a poison-attributed demonic beast. His hair was no longer gray but had turned ashen white. After doing all this, Ning Cheng felt a little relieved. Although these changes would gradually disappear as he cultivated, or he could remove them with a drop of Glimmer of Dawn Ice essence, at least for now, no one would recognize him as Ning Cheng. For a powerful starry sky cultivator, the easiest thing to change was one's appearance. What was truly difficult to change was a person's aura. A person's cultivation method determined that person's aura. If Ning Cheng didn't have the mysterious yellow formless, he wouldn't have changed his appearance in vain. It might be difficult for others to change their aura, but it wasn't difficult for the mysterious yellow formless. The mysterious yellow formless was invisible and formless, and it could change one's aura. As long as it wasn't someone close to him, no one would be able to recognize him from his aura. Unless a top-level powerhouse had known Ning Cheng for a long time and saw him changing his aura, that person would be able to find clues about him. In fact, the strongest person Ning Cheng knew before was Pan Qian. A few days later, Ning Cheng, with his appearance and aura completely changed, returned to the Grand Essence Ruins Quest Hall. He wanted to see if anyone could recognize him. If someone could, he would immediately escape to the Grand Essence Ruins. Half a year later, an artifact crafting stall in the Grand Essence Ruins public square became famous. This artifact crafting stall was called Wanderer Artifact Crafting, and the owner of the artifact crafting stall was called Wanderer. This Wanderer's cultivation and appearance couldn't be compared to the magic treasures he had refined. Don't look at Wanderer's ordinary appearance, which made him look unremarkable. However, the low-rank spirit artifacts he crafted were top-notch. They were even more beautiful and powerful than the low-rank spirit artifacts in the Quest Hall's merchant house. But that wasn't the main point. Wanderer only needed to provide the materials and then provide some points or spirit crystals for the artifact crafting stall. This way, the price was only half of the price in the Quest Hall's merchant house. No cultivator in the Grand Essence ruins didn't know about Wanderer's artifact crafting stall. Most cultivators who wanted low-rank spirit artifacts wouldn't go to the merchant house to buy them. Instead, they would come to this artifact crafting stall. Unfortunately, this artifact crafting stall could only refine low-rank spirit artifacts. It couldn't refine middle-rank spirit artifacts. This artifact crafting stall was located not far from the Grand Essence Ruins Quest Hall. Every month, one had to pay a lot of points to the Quest Hall. Many people tried to persuade Wanderer to set up his stall in another place. They would also go there and buy a shop. However, this Wanderer was a bit dull. Not only was he not good with words, but he also didn't know how to do business. As usual, he paid the points to the Quest Hall and set up his stall next to the Quest Hall. Wanderer's artifact crafting stall was naturally set up by Ning Cheng. He set up the Wanderer's artifact crafting stall next to the Quest Hall. Earning points was just a side job. What he really wanted to wait for was Yan Ji. As long as Yan Ji came back to hand over the task, he would immediately see her. Because of the Ninth Prince's attention, he didn't dare to publicly issue a task to find Yan Ji. Therefore, he could only use this method to wait. Half a year later, Ning Cheng could already refine middle-rank spirit artifacts. He could even barely refine ordinary high-rank spirit artifacts. However, he still only refined low-rank spirit artifacts. He knew that even with the Quest Hall's protection, he couldn't really snatch the business of those merchant houses. He could only refine low-rank spirit artifacts. Moreover, he paid the points to the Quest Hall every month. Therefore, he could stay here for a long time without any problems. The only thing that disappointed Ning Cheng was that even after half a year, he still hadn't seen Yan Ji's shadow. Ning Cheng didn't know if Yan Ji had joined a sect in the Grand Essence domain or if she was doing a task in the depths of the Grand Essence ruins. However, Ning Cheng could rest assured about one thing. Countless spiritual consciousnesses had checked him over the past 6 months, and no one had suspected anything. On this day, Ning Cheng was helping a rogue cultivator craft a low-rank spirit artifact when he felt a spiritual consciousness that made him tremble in fear sweep over him. It felt as if someone would see through him at this moment. Ning Cheng suddenly looked up and saw a middle-aged man wearing an imperial crown walking towards the Quest Hall. Although this man didn't release any aura to suppress him, Ning Cheng felt like he was looking up at him. This was definitely the most powerful cultivator he had seen since coming to the Grand Essence ruins. This person was even more powerful than the red-haired man. Ning Cheng couldn't sense the extent of this man's cultivation. When Ning Cheng saw Man Juren, who had already restored his corporeal body, he instantly understood that this man wearing an imperial crown must be Man Juren's cheap father. Chapter 875. Grandmaster Wanderer, don't sweep around with your spiritual consciousness. Otherwise, no one can save you. The rogue cultivator standing next to Ning Cheng, waiting for Ning Cheng to craft artifacts, saw Ning Cheng's gaze fall on the man wearing the crown and quickly whispered to him. Although Ning Cheng didn't talk much, his artifacts were of high quality and cheap, which made him very popular among rogue cultivators. Most of the cultivators who came to Ning Cheng to craft artifacts referred to him as Grandmaster Wanderer. Ning Cheng looked at the rogue cultivator blankly and asked, "Is that person famous?" The rogue cultivator lowered his voice and said, "That's the Grand Essence's premier sect, Barbarian Dragon Clan's Dragon Emperor Man Huishan. He's a Dao Essence powerhouse. Don't you think he's famous?" Ning Cheng suddenly spoke up, "No wonder everyone bowed to him when I saw him. It turns out to be the Barbarian Dragon Clan's Dragon Emperor." The rogue cultivator nodded, "Of course. It's strange that the Dragon Emperor would come to the Grand Essence Ruins public square. For this selection, the other sects would at most send some elders. The top 10 sects wouldn't even come here. What's the selection? Ning Qing quickly asked. He stayed here to craft artifacts, not only to familiarize himself with artifact crafting methods, but also to wait for Yan Ji. As for other things, he rarely inquired about them to prevent others from discovering anything unusual. Therefore, he had never heard of the selection mentioned by this rogue cultivator. The rogue cultivator smiled and said, "You know that the Grand Essence Great Meet is about to start, right?" "I know about it." Ning Qing replied. He didn't know when the Grand Essence Great Meet would start, but he knew about it. The rogue cultivator pointed to the low-rank spirit artifact in Ning Cheng's hand and said, "I prepared this low-rank spirit artifact for the Grand Essence Great Meet. Can anyone participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet?" Ning Cheng asked in confusion. The rogue cultivator shook his head and said, "Of course not. Only some sects are eligible to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. The Grand Essence Great Meet has rich rewards, so how can rogue cultivators have a share? However, before each Grand Essence Great Meet, some sects would come to the Grand Essence Ruins public square to recruit some powerful rogue cultivators to make up for the lack of sect disciples. Originally, some powerful sects wouldn't bother doing this. But these sects were afraid that some of the powerful sects would come to the Grand Essence Ruins public square to recruit rogue cultivators. Over time, this became a rule. During the period before the Grand Essence Ruins Great Meet, all the sects came together to recruit rogue cultivators to fill the slots for the Great Meet. In the next few days, the major sects will start recruiting disciples. Did you see the many temporary buildings on the edge of the Grand Essence Ruins public square? Because of this rogue cultivator's reminder, Ning Cheng saw some temporary buildings built using artifacts at the edge of the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Some of the buildings even had the signboards of the sections. Clearly, this rogue cultivator was telling the truth. These sects were indeed here to recruit disciples. Ning Cheng asked in confusion, "I heard that the reward for the Grand Essence Great Meet is the extraterritorial spirit spring. If so many rogue cultivators were to participate, wouldn't that reduce the chances of the true sect disciples?" The rogue cultivator on hearing Ning Cheng's words showed a smile. "You think too much. The extraterritorial spirit spring is a reward for the top 10 of the Grand Essence Great Meet. It has nothing to do with recruiting rogue cultivators. Because every time before the Grand Essence Great Meet, there would be a Grand Essence Mystic Realm to snatch. The major sects recruit rogue cultivators to join them in snatching things from the Mystic Realms. Only the top 100 cultivators who obtain divine grasses and other treasures in the Mystic Realms have a chance to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. Therefore, the real Grand Essence Great Meet is a competition between the top 100 cultivators in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. It has nothing to do with others. I want to be selected by the other sects because I want to get some treasures in the Mystic Realm. If I can get a Dao fruit as a reward, it would be worth it." Ning Cheng understood that it was to recruit cannon fodder. He didn't need to ask to understand that snatching things in the Mystic Realm was much more dangerous than snatching things in the Grand Essence Ruins. Since the Grand Essence Mystic Realm chose to open before the Grand Essence Great Meet, it meant that there must be a lot of good things inside. How could the competition inside not be fierce? "Excuse me, which sects came here to recruit disciples this time? What do you mean by the top 10 sects?" Ning Qing knew that his question sounded a bit stupid, so he lowered his voice. Sure enough, when the rogue cultivator heard Ning Cheng's question, his eyes flashed with astonishment. But he quickly returned to normal and explained in detail, "The top 10 sects are the 3 saints, 3 spirits, and 4 deep seas. They refer to River Luo Sacred Sect, 7-Star Sacred Shrine, and 9 Revolving Sacred Dao Pond, Flaming Feather Spirit Mountain, Profound Moon Spirit Gate, and Desolate Spirit Palace, Grand Essence Seas Barbarian Dragon Clan, Silver Dragon Clan, Sunken Fish Palace, and Mysterious Fairy Ancient Clan. I heard that Mysterious Fairy Ancient Clan hasn't appeared in the world for a long time. They don't even participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. As for the rest of the smaller sects, there are too many of them. I can't explain them all. You can come and see for yourself when the time comes. Ning Qing handed the low-rank spirit artifact in his hand to the rogue cultivator. Your weapon is finished. Since I heard you say so much today, I'm going to try my luck. I'll take half of your points. The rogue cultivator felt overjoyed when he heard that Ning Qing only wanted half of his points. He quickly took out his white card and transferred the points to Ning Qing. After thanking him repeatedly, he left. After the rogue cultivator left, Ning Qing also put away his artifact crafting stall. Even after waiting for half a year, Yan Ji still hadn't appeared. Although he could continue to wait, he didn't have that much time. After half a year, his artifact crafting level had soared. Moreover, he had also collected a lot of high-quality artifact crafting materials. Therefore, he decided to refine a few high-rank spirit artifacts for himself first. As for the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, Ning Qing decided to enter it. If he could reach the top 100 in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, he might be able to represent one of the sects to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. That way, he might even be able to enter the extraterritorial spirit spring for cultivation. 2 days later, when Ning Qing came out of the rest stop, the Grand Essence Ruins public square had long since been occupied by sects of various sizes. Unlike what that rogue cultivator said before, Ning Qing not only saw a bunch of small sects on the Grand Essence Ruins public square, but he also saw 9 of the top 10 sections. Apart from the mysterious fairy ancient clan, almost all of the top 10 sects had arrived. Countless rogue cultivators had gathered in the public square. For them, this was an opportunity. Once selected to participate in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, they might have a chance to advance to the Dao Sculpting Realm. The Grand Essence Mystic Realm might be dangerous, but if one wanted to stand at a higher place, where wouldn't it be dangerous? Ning Qing walked around half a circle and saw a weapon in front of each sect that tested one's spiritual consciousness and celestial essence. In this kind of selection, cultivators didn't care about the qualifications of their spiritual roots. Instead, they only looked at the density of celestial essence and the penetration of one's spiritual consciousness. Everyone understood what was going on. This kind of selection wasn't meant to train you as a sect's disciple, but rather to take advantage of each other. After participating in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, each person would get their own benefits. After that, everyone would go their separate ways. Ning Qing stopped at the 7-star Sacred Shrine station and saw an acquaintance, Yan Xishuang. He had saved Yan Xishuang and then teamed up with Yan Xishuang to obtain a drop of 3,000 weak water and a fragment of the Good Fortune Azure Lotus. As a result, the drop of 3,000 weak water went to him, while the Azure Lotus fragment went to Yan Xishuang. Ning Qing still had a good impression of this woman. This woman paid attention to equal exchange. She didn't take advantage of others, nor was she the rude kind. Ning Qing only knew about Nirvana's heart because of Yan Xishuang. Speaking of which, Yan Xishuang was the first to discover Nirvana's heart. However, she encountered a problem while collecting the Nirvana Bluestone and almost died. Seeing Yan Xishuang standing at the 7-star Sacred Shrine station, Ning Qing realized that this woman was also from one of the 3 sacred sections. Ing Yongxian, who came with Shan Yaotzen before, was also from the 7-star Sacred Shrine. However, Ing Yongxian didn't come today. Yan Xishuang's aura had also become much purer. Not only did it become much purer, but it also doubled in strength compared to before. Ning Qing knew that this was the effect of the Azure Lotus fragment. When he first met Yan Xishuang, although she was at the full circle of the Eternal Realm, she wasn't any stronger than him. But now, Yan Xishuang had definitely surpassed the full circle of the Eternal Realm. According to Ning Cheng's speculations, Yan Xishuang definitely hadn't reached the Dao Sculpting Realm yet. With Yan Xishuang's cultivation, there was only one reason why she hadn't reached the Dao Sculpting Realm yet. That is, she wanted to enter the extraterritorial spirit spring to transform her spirit essence. At this moment, Yan Xishuang's aura was clean and pure. If she could transform her spirit essence in the extraterritorial spirit spring, her future would truly be bright. Others might not know what was going on, but Ning Qing knew it. He had the mysterious yellow bead, so he naturally understood that only a good fortune treasure could cause such a big change in Yan Xishuang. Yan Xishuang sat on the side with a calm expression. Her unparalleled beauty attracted many people to come to the 7-star sacred shrine to take the test. In terms of appearance, Yan Xishuang was more beautiful than Kong Ning and Shan Yaotzen. What Ning Qing appreciated more was her attitude towards things. She remained calm and rational. Since he had to join a sect, Ning Qing decided to join the 7-star sacred shrine. The 7-star sacred shrine was one of the top 10 sections. Even if he did something in the mystic realm, it wouldn't affect the sect. This was one of the reasons. Secondly, the big sects would have more slots to enter the mystic realm. Most importantly, Ning Qing knew Yan Xishuang. Senior apprentice sister, I want to participate in the 7-star sacred shrine's disciple selection. Ning Qing walked up to Yan Xishuang and spoke with cupped fists. Yan Xishuang apparently didn't recognize Ning Qing. She nodded and pointed to a testing artifact next to her. Chapter 876. Ning Qing punched out, causing the surrounding space to erupt with slight explosions. Boom! His fist blasted on the testing magic treasure. The testing magic treasure shone brightly, and the 2 markings on the crystal rapidly rose. The celestial essence scale rose past 6 in just a short time, and only stopped when it approached the 7 mark. Even the spiritual consciousness scale climbed to the 6 mark. A burst of exclamations erupted from the surroundings. Although Ning Qing's celestial essence punch did not exceed 7, it was infinitely close to it. More importantly, Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness had already exceeded 6 scales. With such strength, he would have no problem entering the 7-star sacred shrine. Some cultivators who knew Ning Qing came forward to congratulate him. Previously, they had only come to Ning City to craft artifacts, but they did not expect the strength of this artifact crafting master to be so formidable. Yan Xishuang looked at Ning Qing in surprise. Ning Qing didn't seem to have a high cultivation, yet he could erupt with such a powerful force. Using this kind of magic treasure to test a cultivator's cultivation was naturally not very accurate. However, there was one thing. Once the scale of this magic treasure exceeded 5, it would be very difficult to increase it. Since Ning Qing could punch out a celestial essence with a power scale of almost 7, it meant that there was no problem with his strength. She quickly nodded to Ning Qing, "What is your name?" "You've passed the test. After the disciple recruitment ends, come back with us to the 7-star sacred shrine." "Thank you, senior sister. My name is Nian Qiong and I'm a wandering craftsman." Ning Qing quickly cupped his fists and thanked them before standing behind the 7-star sacred shrine with the other 2. Ning Qing considered that the Dragon Emperor of Barbarian Dragon Clan was looking for him, so he simply removed the word Qing from his name. "Junior sister Xishuang, long time no see." A deep man's voice sounded, and a purple-faced man with a big smile appeared in front of Yan Xishuang. Ning Qing felt a powerful water chi fluctuation coming from this man. He had also felt this kind of water chi fluctuation from Manjuran. Unlike Manjuran, this person had a purple face and no ripples on his face. Yan Xishuang calmly replied with a polite greeting, "It turns out to be the second prince. Looks like the Barbarian Dragon Clan attaches great importance to this disciple selection." Hearing about the second prince and the Barbarian Dragon Clan, Ning Qing completely understood. This person was Manjuran's second brother and also the son of Dragon Emperor Man Huishan. Ning Qing had heard from the silver-haired woman that Man Huishan had more than 100 sons. From the looks of it, it was true. The purple-faced man, on hearing Yan Xishuang's reply, showed a soft expression. "Yes, I knew that junior apprentice sister Xishuang might come here, so I took the initiative to apply." Ning Cheng looked at the purple-faced man and understood that this fellow wanted to pursue Yan Xishuang. If Yan Xishuang agreed to it, then it would truly be a case of flowers and cow dung. Yan Xishuang spoke up in a flat tone, "Second Prince, if there's nothing else, please let me through. I still have someone to test." I'm fine." The purple-faced man quickly stepped aside. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "I wonder if junior apprentice Sister Xishuang has the time to go to a rest stop with me for a cup of spiritual tea." "I'm sorry, but I don't have time." Yan Xishuang didn't even bother to look for an answer. "Second brother, we're all very busy, but you're very free, hee." A slightly sarcastic voice sounded. Ning Cheng retracted his spiritual consciousness and gaze. He was too familiar with this person. It was 9th Prince Man Juren, whom he had killed once and whose corporeal body Pan Qian had smashed apart. The purple-faced man smiled at Yan Xishuang, but he wasn't as polite to this 9th Prince. He gave a cold snort. "9th brother, you have the nerve to say that. If not for you being so useless, would my royal father have come to this broken place?" The purple-faced man stopped himself in time. It's just that Man Juren ridiculed him in front of his sweetheart, which made him feel uncomfortable. Man Juren was just about to speak again when he suddenly saw Ning Cheng behind Yan Xishuang. His gaze immediately fell on Ning Cheng, and after carefully looking at Ning Cheng for a while, he frowned and asked, "What's your name?" Yan Xishuang's tone turned cold. "This is my 7-star sacred shrine's newly recruited disciple, Nian Qiong. If the two princes have nothing else to say, please don't interfere with my sex recruitment." The barbarian dragon clan indeed had a Tao perfection powerhouse, but the 7-star sacred shrine didn't fear it. Although the 7-star sacred shrine didn't have any Tao perfection powerhouses, it had 2 Tao fusion powerhouses. Moreover, apart from Man Suatian, the barbarian dragon clan didn't have any other powerhouses. Even Dragon Emperor Man Huishan was only at the full circle Tao essence realm. One could say that without Man Suatian, the barbarian dragon clan wouldn't have qualified to enter the top 10 sects, let alone become the leader of the 4 Seas sections. When the purple-faced second prince heard Yan Xishuang's words, he quickly pulled Man Juren away. "9th brother, don't stay here. Come with me." This time, Man Juren didn't speak any nonsense and silently followed the second prince. He still couldn't help but think about Ning Cheng. He had never seen this person before. So why did he feel an uncontrollable killing intent in his heart when he saw this Nian Qiong? The instincts of the Grand Essence Sea's barbarian dragon clan were extremely powerful. Even if Ning Cheng changed his appearance and converged his aura, he still couldn't completely hide himself from Man Juren's instinctive killing intent. Man Juren suddenly stopped. Who was the person he wanted to kill the most? It was the cultivator named Ning Cheng. At this moment, he felt 90% sure that Nian Qiong was Ning Cheng. After guessing that Nian Qiong was Ning Cheng, Man Juren's first thought was to tell this news to his father, Man Huishan. But as soon as this idea popped up, he quickly extinguished it. If he told this news to his father, this Ning Cheng would definitely die. At the same time, he would also be able to avenge his father's death. However, the 5-colored star splitter arrow wouldn't fall into his hands. His father didn't come to the Grand Essence ruins to avenge him, but for the 5-colored star splitter arrow. Man Juren understood this point better than anyone else. If he couldn't get the 5-colored star splitter arrow, then forget it. But now that he had a chance, he couldn't let it go. He wanted this arrow no matter what. Ning Cheng joined the 7-star sacred shrine because he wanted to go to the Grand Essence mystic realm. At that time, as long as he found a few people to secretly kill Ning Cheng in the Grand Essence mystic realm, who would know that he snatched the 5-colored star splitter arrow? Ning Cheng's 5-colored star splitter arrow was indeed powerful, but no matter how powerful it was, he could only shoot it once. As long as he grasped this point, he wouldn't have to worry about killing Ning Cheng. The more Man Juren thought about this plan, the more feasible it seemed. From Manjurin's gaze and expression before he left, Ning Qing realized that Manjurin might have recognized him. At this moment, Ning Qing couldn't wait to leave immediately. But when he saw Manjurin not making any moves, not even his spiritual consciousness falling on him, Ning Qing started to doubt it again. But this doubt didn't last long. Ning Qing believed that Manjurin had recognized him, and there was no need for luck at all. The reason why Manjurin didn't make any moves wasn't because he didn't recognize him, but because he didn't want to tell his father about him. The only possibility was that Manjurin wanted to take everything from him. Manjurin had gone to the mysterious Yellow Starland alone to do those things. This person had great ambitions. But after knowing that Manjurin wanted to take the 5-colored star splitter arrow for himself, Ning Qing wasn't in a hurry. If he didn't know that Manjurin recognized him, he might have suffered a huge loss. Now that Manjurin recognized him, he didn't believe that he couldn't kill this fellow. 3 days passed, and no one came looking for him. Ning Qing realized that his guess was right. Manjurin really wanted to take everything from him. 3 days later, the major sects on the Grand Essence Ruins public square finally finished recruiting rogue cultivators. The 7-star sacred shrine had recruited a total of 20 people, and Ning Qing was just one of them. Among the 20 people, Ning Qing's strength only ranked in the middle, which wasn't too outstanding. The 7-star sacred shrine only had one elder leading the team. Ning Qing couldn't see through this elder's strength, but he was sure that this elder wasn't as strong as Barbarian Dragon Clan's patriarch, Man Huishan. As for Yan Xishuang, she most likely came to help. The Grand Essence Ruins might be far from the entrance to the Grand Essence Domain, but no matter how far it was, it wouldn't take long to teleport there. This was Ning Qing's first time entering the Grand Essence Domain. But after entering the Grand Essence Domain, he understood why the sects of the Grand Essence realm gathered here. The spirit chi in the Grand Essence Domain was more than a dozen times stronger than the outside world. Moreover, this was just an ordinary place. Some sects would choose places with denser spirit chi. Comparing this place to the Grand Essence Ruins and Boundary Essence Spirit Sea City made Ning Qing understand the truth that the strong grew stronger. Half a day later, Ning Qing and the others arrived at the entrance of the 7-star sacred shrine. The 7-star sacred shrine had a majestic atmosphere, and the spirit chi here was several times denser than the outside world. Standing here, Ning Qing even had an illusion that the laws within the 7-star sacred shrine space were more stable than in other places. If the 7-star sacred shrine was like this, then it must be the same for other sacred or spirit gates. After entering the sect, Ning Qing and the others were each assigned a room and a jade card. After that, no one came to ask about it. Returning to the room assigned to him, Ning Qing used his spiritual consciousness to sweep the jade card, and immediately caught some of the information inside it. The Grand Essence Mystic Realm would open in 5 months. During these 5 months, they could move around in the outer sect of the 7-star sacred shrine. They could also go out, but they had to come back before the Grand Essence Mystic Realm opened. There was one more thing that they had to abide by. That is, they weren't allowed to enter the inner sect. Otherwise, they would die without mercy. Ning Qing put away the jade card and shook his head. The 7-star sacred shrine didn't even treat them as an outer sect. At best, it treated them as a batch of cannon fodder. As cannon fodder, one must have the consciousness of being cannon fodder and not run around. Even without this jade card's warning, Ning Qing didn't plan to go out. He planned to refine a fake 5-colored star splitter arrow in the next few months. Manjurin couldn't possibly not know how powerful his 5-colored star splitter arrow was. On the premise that he knew how powerful his 5-colored star splitter arrow was, Manjurin still dared to keep it for himself. It meant that he had confidence in himself. In any case, he had to take some precautions. Ning Qing was just about to activate the restrictions around his room when someone appeared outside his room. Chapter 877. Brother Nian, sorry to disturb you. This person did not wait for Ning Cheng to speak and first greeted Ning Cheng with cupped fists. Ning Cheng chuckled, so it turns out to be Brother Xiong. Brother Xiong, please come in. Ning Cheng knew this person. He was a rogue cultivator selected by the 7-star sacred shrine along with him. His name was Xiong Tsang. His cultivation was higher than him, late-stage eternal realm. The strength displayed by this fellow was almost the same as him, with his celestial essence close to 7, while his spiritual consciousness had broken through to 6. Xiong Tsang's appearance was similar to his name. He was burly and had a big face. His whole body was almost square. After Xiong Tsang came in and sat down, Ning Cheng casually activated the restriction, and spoke with a smile, "Since Brother Xiong came looking for me, then there must be something. Brother Nyen, have you ever thought about staying in the 7-star sacred shrine and then entering the inner sect?" Xiong Tsang asked directly when he heard Ning Cheng's question. "Enter the 7-star sacred shrine's inner sect?" Ning Cheng asked in doubt. He knew that the 7-star sacred shrine wanted to use them as cannon fodder, so how could they let them enter the inner sect? Xiong Tsang spoke up in a low tone, "Brother Nyen, you're also a rogue cultivator. You should know how difficult it is for a rogue cultivator to achieve Dao sculpting. Even if we obtain the Dao fruit, I'm afraid that our chances of reaching Dao sculpting would not be high. There was no Dao arena to listen to the Dao, no divine powers pavilion, and no cultivation technique hall. What we can do is to fumble around on our own, lacking a guiding direction. If we rogue cultivators want to go further, we can only join a sect." Ning Cheng remained silent. He wouldn't join the 7-star sacred shrine, and he also didn't agree with Xiong Tsang's words. When one's cultivation was low, a guide was indeed very important. However, once one reached the eternal realm, they would have to rely on their own comprehension of all things and their understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. Even if they had a powerful master to guide them, it would still be of limited use. However, Ning Cheng was somewhat interested in the Dao sanctum that Xiong Tsang spoke about. The dojo was a place where some powerful Dao confirming cultivators would discuss the Dao. If one could go and listen, it would be beneficial to one's understanding of the Dao. Every sect had its own Dao rite, and the most famous one in the Grand Essence realm was the Grand Essence Dao rite. It was just that it was very difficult for itinerant cultivators to enter and listen to Dao in these places. Xiong Tsang, on seeing Ning Cheng's silence, thought that Ning Cheng agreed with his words. Therefore, he continued, "The 7-star sacred shrine has 2 Dao fusion powerhouses, and the Spirit Technique Pavilion has countless powerful spirit techniques. Then how can Brother Xiong join the 7-star sacred shrine?" Ning Cheng asked. Xiong Tsang nodded, "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to Brother Nyen about. Brother Nyen should know that entering the Grand Essence mystic realm this time has a high chance of falling. However, it also has a high chance of us reaching the sky in a single bound. If we can collect enough divine grasses in the mystic realm and rank in the top 10, we would have a chance to represent the 7-star sacred shrine in the Grand Essence Great Meet." "Wait." Ning Cheng interrupted Xiong Tsang's words, "Brother Xiong, you said that only the top 10 in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm have the opportunity to represent the 7-star sacred shrine in the Grand Essence Great Meet? How come I heard that the Grand Essence Great Meet is only for the top 100? Hearing Ning Cheng's words, Xiong Tsang laughed, "Brother Nyen, you're too naive. Taking the top 100 to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet is not bad. But only the top 10 in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm have the opportunity to participate. The remaining 90 people are allocated by the major sections. Brother Nyen, don't tell me you don't even know about this. The Grand Essence Mystic Realm opens mainly for these sects to plunder divine grasses and some top-grade heavenly treasures. To put it bluntly, we hold our heads in our hands and serve these major sections." Speaking of this, Xiong Tsang showed a self-deprecating smile. "It's equivalent to us rogue cultivators desperately competing for divine grasses in the mystic realm for the major sections. While those major sects watch us fight to the death while waiting for us to hand over the divine grasses we risked our lives to obtain to them. Ning Cheng's heart sank, and his expression turned a little ugly. He entered the mystic realm to search for divine grasses because he needed a lot of them. But more importantly, he wanted to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. Although many cultivators entered the mystic realm, Ning Cheng still felt confident about entering the top 100. But he didn't feel confident about entering the top 10. From the looks of it, that rogue cultivator also didn't know much about it. Searching for natural treasures didn't depend on one's strength. It also depended on one's luck. Xiongtsang didn't know about Ning Cheng's thoughts and continued, "We can join forces. As long as we can reach the top 10, we can get 2 spots to participate in the Grand Essence Great Meet. At that time, we can offer our spots to the sects and join them." Ning Cheng calmed down and asked, "Brother Xiong, how many cultivators enter the mystic realm to search for natural treasures?" "I believe Brother Xiong already knows about it. But why can Brother Xiong help us enter the top 10? Xiongtsang showed a smile. "If Brother Nian is willing to join forces with me, I will naturally tell you my method." Ning Cheng suddenly showed a smile. "Brother Xiong, please. I like to be alone. I just want to go in and find a Dao fruit. I don't have much hope of joining a sacred shrine." When Ning Cheng heard Xiongtsang's words, he immediately understood what Xiongtsang meant. Xiongtsang most likely had a set of sneak attacks. He most likely wanted to kill other cultivators in the mystic realm and snatch their divine grasses to reach the top 10. This kind of robbery went against Ning Cheng's conscience. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't join forces with Xiongtsang. Hearing Ning Cheng's words, Xiongtsang's eyes flashed with disappointment. A moment later, he stood up and cupped his fists towards Ning Cheng. "In that case, I'll take my leave." Ning Cheng waited for Xiongtsang to leave before activating the restrictions around the room again. Xiongtsang's proposal reminded him that since Xiongtsang could think of robbing others to obtain divine grasses, there must be others who could think of robbing others to obtain divine grasses. From the looks of it, he not only had to guard against Manjuran but also against these rogue cultivators. In the next few months, Ning Cheng didn't go anywhere. In addition to crafting a few spirit artifacts for himself, he also crafted a 5-colored star splitter arrow. The power of this arrow couldn't compare to the real 5-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Cheng wanted to make this arrow look similar to the 5-colored star splitter arrow. One could say that this arrow couldn't even compare to an ordinary middle-rank spirit artifact bow. Ning Cheng didn't craft this arrow for its power. Rather, he crafted it to deal with Manjuran. In addition, Ning Cheng also crafted a large number of trap and kill array discs. Ning Cheng's attainment in the Tao of arrays was much higher than his cultivation. If he didn't make use of it, it would be a waste of all the time he spent studying the Tao of arrays. Although the influence of array discs wasn't as strong as array formations, in a showdown between powerhouses, as long as one had a slight advantage, it could change the outcome of the battle. 5 months passed by quickly. On this day, when Ning Cheng finished crafting another trap and kill array, the Jade Card received a call to assemble. Ning Cheng put away his things and arrived at the public square. Xiongtsang had already arrived. When Ning Cheng saw him standing with another rogue cultivator, he understood that this fellow had found a companion. This time, the leader of the group changed to an old man with white hair and a beard. Ning Cheng couldn't see the old man's cultivation, but he could feel that this old man was strong, most likely a second-step Dao confirming powerhouse. Ning Cheng also noticed that in addition to the 20 rogue cultivators on the public square, there were also many disciples from the 7-star sacred shrine. Among these disciples, Ning Cheng saw Yan Xishuang, but he still didn't see Ying Yongxian. A huge black airship landed in the middle of the public square, and the white-haired old man landed on the bow of the airship and said to the cultivators on the public square, "This time, our 7-star sacred shrine will have a total of 70 disciples enter the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. Originally, the disciples belonging to the seven-star sacred shrine can use the divine grasses and treasures found in the mystic realm to exchange for the sect's task points, spirit pills, or even spirit techniques. If you contribute a lot, you can even exchange for Tao pills and Tao fruits. As for the disciples who later join my seven-star sacred shrine, you can also exchange the divine grasses found in the mystic realm for spirit pills, spirit techniques, or cultivation methods. If you contribute a lot, you can also exchange for Tao fruits or Tao pills. If you rank in the top 10, you will have the opportunity to join the seven-star sacred shrine's inner sect. You can freely enter and exit the seven-star sacred shrine's Tao Rite, Spirit Technique Pavilion. No wonder they weren't afraid of cultivators hiding things. Even if a rogue cultivator collected a lot of divine grasses and hid them, what was the use? At most, they could exchange them for some merchant houses. Could a rogue cultivator ask someone who could refine spirit pills to help them refine pills? As for refining Tao pills, they couldn't even think about it. As for exchanging for Tao fruits, Ning Cheng only needed to think about how Kong Ning used more than 400,000 points to exchange for a falling scar fruit to understand that Tao fruits weren't easy to obtain. Not every cultivator was like him, a Tao sculpting pill deity. Perhaps for these rogue cultivators, if they obtained a lot of divine grasses, they could hand them over to the sect and exchange them for cultivation resources that could be used directly. This was the best way. Of course, I have to remind the 20 disciples who later joined my seven-star sacred shrine. After the ranking, you must hand over 1/5 of the divine grasses you obtain to the sect before you can exchange for anything else. If you obtain less than 100 divine grasses, you must hand over half of them to the sect. When Ning Cheng heard this, he couldn't help but think that the seven-star sacred shrine's own disciples didn't have to hand over 1/5. As for the rogue cultivators who joined later, they had to hand over some divine grasses to enjoy the same treatment as the seven-star sacred shrine's disciples. Ning Cheng didn't feel surprised. It would have been strange if the seven-star sacred shrine didn't do this. Since the seven-star sacred shrine provided the opportunity to enter the mystic realm, it naturally had to collect some taxes. If there's no problem, everyone, get on the airship and head to the Grand Essence mystic realm. After the white-haired old man finished speaking, the cultivators waiting on the public square immediately flew onto the airship. The rogue cultivators, in order to build a relationship with the seven-star sacred shrine's disciples, lowered their posture and asked some questions. Ning Cheng didn't step forward and speak too much. Since a dragon emperor was staring at him, it was best not to talk nonsense. From the discussions of these cultivators, Ning Cheng also learned that the white-haired old man leading the team this time was called Fan Mu, a Tao essence powerhouse at the second step of Tao confirming. A day later, the seven-star sacred shrine's airship stopped. From the deck, Ning Cheng saw that the airship didn't stop in the starry sky but on a very empty wasteland. At this moment, many temporary caves and buildings had already been set up around the wasteland, most likely belonging to some of the sects that had arrived earlier. Chapter 878. After Ning Cheng followed the cultivators from the seven-star sacred shrine off the airship, he saw some acquaintances. Barbarian Dragon Clan's second prince, ninth prince, and even Shan Yaotzen were here. Since Kong Ning didn't come, she probably went into seclusion to prepare for her advancement. Although Manjurin's gaze didn't move towards Ning Cheng still caught his vague spiritual consciousness. Senior apprentice Sister Yen. Ning Cheng suddenly walked up to Yen Xishuang and called out. Yen Xishuang's gaze fell on Ning Cheng, and she quickly remembered who Ning Cheng was. She gave a and asked, "Dao friend Yen Xiong, did you call me for something?" She had a very deep impression of Ning Cheng. Among the rogue cultivators recruited this time, Ning Cheng's cultivation was the lowest, but his strength was only at the middle level. Ning Cheng gave a salute and said, "Yes, because we are about to enter the Grand Essence mystic realm. Senior sister knows that my cultivation isn't high, so I'm a little worried." Yen Xishuang showed a slight smile, the Grand Essence Mystic Realm is huge, so you don't have to worry about it. As long as I don't meet those ruthless people, I'll be fine as long as I'm careful. After hesitating for a while, she spoke up again. This time, only Tao sculpting cultivators and below can enter the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. With your strength, you should be able to protect yourself. Don't offend the disciples of some big sects, especially the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. Of course, not all of the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children will enter. It was Ning Cheng's first time hearing about the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. He didn't even know what they were, nor did he intend to ask about them. Seeing that Yan Xishuang was about to leave after speaking, Ning Cheng quickly asked, "Senior apprentice Sister Yan, I saw that the Barbarian Dragon clan's 9th prince also seemed to want to enter the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. Did he also not reach the Tao Sculpting Realm?" Yan Xishuang replied with a calm voice, "Man Juren is a proud person. If he didn't go to the extraterritorial spirit spring to transform his spirit essence, how could he reach Tao Sculpting? After you enter the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, just concentrate on searching for divine grasses. Once you encounter danger, don't let treasures blind your eyes. There are countless treasures in the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. If you can't find them in one place, you can find them in other places." After saying that, Yan Xishuang no longer paid any attention to Ning Cheng and turned to leave. Ning Cheng stood in silence. He had always guessed that most of the 9th prince was a Tao sculpting powerhouse. Even Hong Luan, whom he killed, was a Tao sculpting powerhouse. From the looks of it, neither the 9th prince nor Hong Luan had reached the Tao sculpting realm. It seemed that he had overestimated his own strength. Although his 5-colored star splitter arrow could kill the 9th prince, it might not necessarily kill a genuine Tao sculpting cultivator. As long as he couldn't kill a Tao sculpting cultivator, he could only wait for a Tao sculpting cultivator to kill him. After learning about the gap between him and Tao sculpting, Ning Cheng didn't continue to ask questions outside. Instead, he returned to the station and waited to enter the Grand Essence Mystic Realm with peace of mind. 3 days later, Ning Cheng finally understood why he had chosen this place. More than a dozen experts from various sects set up a huge teleportation array in the middle of the wilderness. Apparently, they wanted to use this method to enter the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. Although Ning Cheng's understanding of the Tao of array formations might not be as good as the powerhouses who set up the teleportation array, he could still see that the various components of this teleportation array looked ancient. Moreover, he couldn't see the refining method used to craft it. From this, Ning Cheng understood that this teleportation array had always existed. Most likely, the major sects of the Grand Essence domain wanted to jointly control the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. Therefore, they decided to dismantle the teleportation array leading to the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, allowing each sect to control some of the teleportation components. Once the Grand Essence Mystic Realm's opening time arrived, they would then assemble the teleportation array together. Ning Cheng stood in the crowd about to be teleported and counted the number of people entering the Grand Essence Mystic Realm. There were at least 10,000 people. A middle-aged female cultivator stood in front of the teleportation array and spoke with a crisp voice, "All disciples who are about to enter the Grand Essence Mystic Realm, please pay attention. Although the Grand Essence Mystic Realm only opens every 3,000 years, the area inside is vast. Even to this day, there are many places that no one has ever been to. This Mystic Realm will open for a year. After a year, everyone will still be teleported out of the Mystic Realm's teleportation array. Alright, everyone can now enter the teleportation array." Ning Cheng felt a little puzzled. Why didn't anyone say what would happen if they didn't come out of the Mystic Realm within a year? He whispered to a cultivator from the 7-star sacred shrine beside him, "This Tao friend, can I ask what happens if you don't come out within a year? What if you don't make it to the teleportation array within a year?" The cultivator from the 7-star sacred shrine glanced at Ning Cheng with disdain and gave a cold snort. He didn't even bother to answer. Apparently, he looked down on rogue cultivators like Ning Cheng, who entered the Mystic Realm with the help of a sacred gate. Ning Qing didn't ask any more questions and decided to go in first. This teleportation array was too big, and each teleportation carried nearly 200 to 300 people. In just half an incense stick worth of time, it was the 7-star sacred shrine's turn. Ning Cheng and the other cultivators had just stood on the teleportation array when they felt a spiritual consciousness imprint fall on him. It was almost impossible for an eternal cultivator to leave a spiritual consciousness imprint on him without being discovered. But before Ning Cheng could find the person who left the spiritual consciousness imprint, the teleportation array activated. Feeling a wave of dizziness, Ning Cheng immediately understood that this teleportation array was an ultra-long-distance teleportation array. After a long time, Ning Cheng's feet touched the ground and he appeared in the middle of another huge teleportation array. Following the crowd out of the teleportation array, Ning Cheng found that he was still in the wilderness. However, the spirit qi here was far from comparable to the place he came from. The spirit qi here was not only pure but also rich. No wonder many precious divine grasses could grow here. After everyone was teleported over, they quickly dispersed. Most of them escaped alone, while a small number of cultivators formed teams. Ning Cheng found a direction and quickly left. After an incense stick worth of time, Ning Cheng stopped. He saw a piece of Zui Meng glass, which was a low-level divine grass. In the Grand Essence realm, divine grasses were divided into 3 levels: low-level, middle-level, and top-level. Low-level divine grasses were the most common, while top-level divine grasses were rare. Generally speaking, spirit pills refined from low-level and middle-level divine grasses would only have an effect on first-step Tao confirming cultivators. Only a few spirit pills refined from top-level divine grasses would have an effect on second-step Tao confirming holy emperors. The cultivation resources that second-step Tao confirming powerhouses truly pursued were Tao pills or Tao fruits. Moreover, because top-level divine grasses were hard to find, there weren't many Tao essence pill deities in the Grand Essence realm. As for Tao essence pill saints, they were even rarer. Although Zui Meng glass was a low-level divine grass, it had some use for Ning Cheng. Zui Meng glass could be used to refine accumulating dream pills, which had a great effect on comprehending spirit techniques, especially those with intent-level spirit techniques like None to Depend On or Sunset's Twilight. Ning Cheng was now a Tao sculpting pill deity. Therefore, even if he couldn't use it, he could refine accumulating dream pills for sale. After collecting all the Zui Meng glass, Ning Cheng ignored the spiritual consciousness imprint on his body and continued to explore deeper. An hour later, Ning Cheng stopped in a valley. He felt sure that Man Juren had asked someone to place the spiritual consciousness imprint on him. Moreover, Man Juren wouldn't have much patience for the 5-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Cheng wanted to concentrate on searching for divine grasses and wasn't in the mood to play hide-and-seek with Man Juren. This place was the place where Man Juren died. Ning Cheng had already witnessed Man Juren's power. Moreover, after Man Juren learned about his 5-colored star splitter arrow, he would definitely have a helper if he came looking for him again. With Man Juren's means, the most appropriate way was to find someone to let him shoot the 5-colored star splitter arrow first, and then deal with it himself. Because of this guess, Ning Cheng refined a fake 5-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Cheng then started to arrange array formations in the valley. He didn't arrange a killing array but an entrapment array. After arranging the entrapment array, Ning Cheng took out a jade strip and pretended to study a map. But he didn't study it for long when a flash of light landed in front of Ning Cheng. "You're Ning Cheng." A thin man with a short stature landed not far from Ning Cheng. He had a few sparse hairs on his head, which made him look a little funny. However, Ning Cheng didn't find this man funny at all. He could feel that this thin male cultivator was even stronger than Hong Luan, whom he had met before. If it weren't for his recent rapid increase in strength and the many means available to him, he would have to use the 5-colored star splitter arrow. Ning Cheng knew that he couldn't use the 5-colored star splitter arrow right now. This thin man most likely belonged to Man Juren. Manjuran hadn't come out, and he couldn't find any trace of Manjuran. Ning Qing felt sure that as long as he killed this thin man with one arrow, Manjuran would definitely come out and become the fisherman. This thin man was truly an idiot. Manjuran pushed him out to die, yet he still didn't know it. Who is Ning Qing? Even if he knew that the other party knew that he was Ning Qing wouldn't admit it. Manjuran wasn't worth his fear. What really scared him was the person behind Manjuran. The thin man gave a cold snort. Whether you are Ning Qing or not, die for me. A pair of scissors that seemed to want to cut this space in half suddenly enveloped Ning Qing's space. Even Ning Qing's breathing felt shrouded within it. A powerful demonic essence aura came crashing down on him. Under this suppression, Ning Qing felt like a fallen leaf swaying in the wind and rain. He couldn't fight with this person for too long. Ning Qing didn't even bring out a weapon and directly slashed out with the spiritual consciousness chop. Since cultivating the spiritual consciousness chop, this was the first time Ning Qing used this cultivation method. Catcha. Because Ning Qing wanted to bring out the spiritual consciousness chop, his domain immediately weakened. Under the suppression of the other party's powerful domain, a crisp cracking sound rang out. The spiritual consciousness chop also blasted into the thin man's sea of consciousness at the same time. The thin man's expression changed, and he exclaimed in surprise. Ning Qing felt shocked to find that an invisible force had blocked his spiritual consciousness chop after it slashed into the other party's sea of consciousness. He couldn't let this person catch his breath. Once this person caught his breath and blocked the spiritual consciousness chop, he would have no choice but to wait for his death. Understanding this, Ning Qing punched out again without hesitation. It was a punch containing the laws of time. Without sunset's twilight, it was just a pure punch. This punch contained the Tao charm of the laws of time, which caused the thin man to freeze for a moment. The spiritual consciousness chop then crushed through the thin man's sea of consciousness without any hindrance. Almost without any pause, Ning Qing raised his hand and brought out a long black arrow. Chapter 879. The arrow frantically converged the killing aura around it, forming a vortex. Looking from afar, the killing intent around the arrow was getting more and more concentrated, and its momentum was getting more and more terrifying, but the arrow was getting weaker and weaker. The emaciated man had already broken free from Ning Qing's laws of time. Only he knew that Ning Qing's arrow, which was filled with endless killing intent, posed no threat to him at all. The real threat to him was the spiritual consciousness chop in his sea of consciousness. This was definitely a genuine spiritual consciousness cultivation method. If he couldn't resist it, then in just a few breaths, his sea of consciousness would collapse under this spiritual consciousness chop. The thin man opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. The aura of the Tao runes around his body circulated endlessly. An even more powerful spiritual consciousness swept out from his sea of consciousness, blocking Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness chop. The spiritual consciousness chop that blasted into the thin man's sea of consciousness instantly came to a halt, while at the same time, it also retreated. Ning Qing also could not bear it and also spurted out a mouthful of blood. With his spiritual consciousness chop suppressed, Ning Qing immediately knew that it was not good. This thin man was just too powerful. Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness chop combined with the laws of time couldn't kill this fellow. As long as he waited for this person to expel his spiritual consciousness chop, he would definitely die. Moreover, the ninth prince was waiting beside him. At this time, even if he threw out the strangulation array, it would be useless. This thin man was terrifyingly strong, even stronger than Hong Luan and the ninth prince. The spiritual consciousness chop completely relied on Ning Qing's sea of consciousness to support it. However, Ning Qing did not dare to burn his spiritual consciousness. He had to conserve his energy to deal with the ninth prince. The fake five-colored star splitter arrow still gathered its imposing aura, but at this time, neither Ning Qing nor the thin man cared about this arrow. Even if this arrow was shot, it wouldn't be of much use. The gathered killing aura was merely a superficial phenomenon. Poof! The spiritual consciousness chop once again forced him to take a step back, while Ning Qing once again spurted out a mouthful of blood. At this time, a faintly discernible shadow appeared in the range of Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness, causing Ning Cheng's heart to turn even more gloomy. He knew that the ninth prince had appeared. He couldn't let Manjuran know about his situation at this time, nor could he let Manjuran take action. Now that Ning Cheng had no other choice, how could he care about whether his heart liked her or not? Now that he had lost his life, he couldn't care less about the absorbing star's great technique. Once the spiritual sense chop was expelled from the other party's spiritual sense, he wouldn't even have the chance to use the dark nether spirit devourer. Divine sense, devour for me. A black whirlpool, invisible to the naked eye, appeared within the thin man's sea of consciousness. The thin man immediately felt as if his divine sense, which had gained the upper hand, had been devoured by something and had suddenly disappeared. Seeing that the spiritual consciousness chop was about to break free from his obstruction, he anxiously stimulated his spiritual consciousness once again. However, when he blasted out his divine sense again, it was also devoured by the black vortex. This is the vicious dark nether spirit devourer. The thin man opened his mouth and wanted to scream out, but his voice was completely suppressed by the spiritual consciousness chop. The spiritual consciousness chop broke free from the shackles of the thin man's sea of consciousness, and like a surging stream of iron, it came crashing down. The emaciated man's 7 apertures started to bleed, while his sea of consciousness completely collapsed. Even the giant scissors that were threatening Ning Cheng powerlessly fell to the ground. At this time, the long arrow in Ning Cheng's hand shot out. The colorful world completely covered the space between the two of them, and only the killing intent pervaded the air. Or rather, only the fake killing intent permeated around the thin man's body, which had already collapsed. Bang! The thin man's head exploded, and the 5-colored star splitter arrow disappeared without a trace. Ning Cheng grabbed the thin man's ring in his hand, slumped to the ground, and swallowed a few medicinal pills. Ning Cheng didn't need to disguise himself. His face had already turned pale, even though his spiritual consciousness still remained strong. But Ning Cheng knew that many of these spiritual consciousnesses had come from devouring them. This wasn't because his spiritual consciousness remained in his sea of consciousness. It wasn't a blessing for him, but a disaster. He couldn't refine these spiritual consciousnesses according to the dark nether spirit devourer scroll and take them for himself. Once he did that, he wouldn't be able to get up again. This thing was like taking drugs. As long as he refined it once, he would get a second time, a third time. Whether it was a blessing or not, he still had some use for these spiritual consciousnesses. Because Manjuran had already walked over unhurriedly. He looked at the thin man on the ground, killed by Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness chop, and showed a smile. Ning Cheng, you're the first genius I've ever seen. A puny middle-stage eternal cultivator killed Ding Xiao, a half-step Dao sculpting cultivator. I don't know if you can shoot another arrow at me, but I don't know. I'm really looking forward to it. Do you want my 5-colored star splitter arrow? Ning Cheng slowly stood up, and another black arrow appeared in his hand. Even knowing that Ning Cheng couldn't shoot the 5-colored star splitter arrow a second time, Manjuran's pupils shrank when he saw the black arrow in Ning Cheng's hand. In addition to this 5-colored star splitter arrow, you also have the life force plate. If I didn't guess wrong, my life force plate is also in your hands. Ning Cheng, I really appreciate you. If you hand over your soul and sign a servant contract with me, I can spare you once. The ninth prince spoke with a cold voice. If not for the life force plate's aura coming from Ning Cheng, Manjuran would have already taken action. At this moment, his domain had completely locked down Ning Cheng. Moreover, Manjuran had already felt Ning Cheng's aura weakening. Ning Cheng also understood why Manjuran had endured until now. Moreover, Ning Qing guessed that his life force plate wasn't a righteous weapon. Maybe he hid it from his father. Regardless of Manjuran's reason, Ning Qing knew that he couldn't stay here for long. Besides using the 5-colored star splitter arrow, he had no other way to deal with Manjuran. Knowing that he would weaken after shooting this arrow, Ning Qing didn't hesitate to stimulate his spiritual consciousness and celestial essence. The black arrow floated in front of Ning Qing, and a 5-colored longbow suddenly appeared under the arrow. A gray aura of death quickly spread out, and the surrounding killing power started to churn. At this moment, heaven and earth changed color, and everything seemed to have lost their dominion over life. Death aura, terrifying killing intent, spatial killing power, it slowly swept up, forming a whirlpool-like hole that condensed into a gray aura of death. Manjuran immediately locked onto the 5-colored star splitter arrow the moment it came out. He stared at Ning Qing in horror and didn't dare to move. How is this possible? How can you shoot a second arrow? This is absolutely impossible. Manjuran muttered to himself in a hoarse voice. His eyes didn't show madness but fear. No matter how heaven-defying Ning Qing was, he couldn't shoot 2 arrows in a row in the eternal realm. The first time he faced the 5-colored star splitter arrow, he managed to escape with his life because of a substitute. But this time, he didn't have a substitute. Ning Qing didn't show any sadness or joy. Instead, his celestial essence and spiritual consciousness still crazily pressed down on Manjuran. Since he could kill Manjuran once, he could kill him a second time. Manjuran's domain began to collapse, and the gray-colored killing intent from the 5-colored star splitter arrow swept through everything around him. Ning Qing's hair gradually turned dry, and his face grew paler. In other words, without Mansuo Tian suppressing the various sects, the barbarian dragon clan's glory would have long been gone. The barbarian dragon clan did not have many successors. Until now, apart from Mansuo Tian, they did not have another primordial chaos divine emperor. Even he himself had been stuck at primordial Tao for more than 100,000 years. However, after old ancestor Mansuo Tian fused with the Tao, he never showed his face again. If something were to happen, who could the barbarian dragon tribe rely on? They would still have to rely on him, the Dragon Emperor. In the best private room in the Grand Essence Ruins rest stop, Man Huishan casually picked up the spiritual tea on the table and took a sip. Whether the 5-colored star splitter arrow fell on lifeless poison hand, heartless monk, or Ning Qing, no one else could know about it. This weapon, he, Man Huishan, had to get it. After taking a sip of the spiritual tea, Man Huishan's expression changed drastically before he could even put the teacup on the table. He immediately threw the teacup in his hand and slapped the table in front of him into nothingness. Then, he suddenly stood up and roared, "Who dared to kill this Man Huishan's son?" Chapter 880. Whether he dared or not, Ning Qing had already killed Manjuran. At this moment, he was healing in an abandoned cave. He had placed a few defensive and concealment array discs at the entrance of the cave, while Chasing Bull stood guard at the cave entrance to help warn others. Chasing Bull currently only had the strength of a Class 7 Starry Sky demonic beast. In this place, it could only serve as a warning. None of the cultivators who could enter this mystic realm had a cultivation below the eternal realm. Some disciples of large sects had even reached half-step Tao sculpting. If Chasing Bull had to face these cultivators, it wouldn't even be able to last a single round. Previously, every time Ning Qing brought out the 5-colored star splitter arrow, he would have to rest for more than a month. But this time, Ning Qing only took half a month to fully recover. When Ning Qing came out of this deserted cave, he did not feel much joy in his heart. The spiritual consciousnesses that he had swallowed were mixed in his sea of consciousness. If he didn't get rid of them, he wouldn't be able to cultivate at all, let alone advance. However, no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to separate the devoured divine senses. Perhaps there was only one way to go, and that was to refine these divine senses into his own. Ning Qing did not want to do this, nor did he dare to do this. Even if he didn't think about the spiritual consciousness that he had swallowed from his sea of consciousness, he couldn't hide the fact that he killed Manjuran. But even if he couldn't cover it up, Ning Qing would still kill Manjuran without hesitation. Killing Manjuran might have put him in a bad situation. But if he didn't kill Manjuran, it would be even worse for him. Putting all these things together, it would be strange if Ning Qing was happy about it. Fortunately, there was still a year left. Ning Qing decided to put these worries aside and concentrate on collecting divine grasses. The Grand Essence Mystic Realm truly was a massive place. Even with nearly 10,000 people entering this mystic realm, Ning Qing hadn't met a single person for a few days. In just a few days, he managed to collect Black Fog Heavenly Grass, Desolate God Sprout, Zen Spirit Flower, and more than a dozen kinds of low-grade and mid-grade divine herbs. As for high-grade divine grasses, Ning Qing didn't see a single one. As for finding enough divine grasses and participating in the Grand Essence Great Meet, Ning Qing had long since put it aside. Tens of thousands of people entered this mystic realm to collect divine grasses and search for all kinds of heavenly treasures. If he wanted to enter the top 10, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. This was not a matter of cultivation or strength. It was completely dependent on luck. Ning Qing knew that because he possessed a good fortune treasure, his luck had always been good. However, a little bit of luck and a great destiny were two different things. Finding divine grasses like this was completely a matter of luck. On this day, Ning Qing had just found a Buddha golden sifting fruit when he felt a violent spatial fluctuation rushing over. His spiritual consciousness immediately swept over, but it was quickly blocked. Although the Grand Essence Mystic Realm didn't directly suppress one's spiritual consciousness, it couldn't penetrate any further. Even with Ning Qing's starry sky sea of consciousness, his spiritual consciousness could only linger within a radius of 1 to 2,000 miles. This kind of spatial fluctuation definitely indicated a battle between cultivators. Ning Qing initially did not want to get involved in this kind of thing. Sensing the faint aura of high-grade divine grasses coming from the spatial fluctuations, Ning Qing immediately changed his mind. Even after searching for so long, he still hadn't found a single high-grade divine grass. Some of the high-grade divine grasses were even more precious than ordinary Dao fruits. Therefore, when he sensed the aura of these high-grade divine grasses, Ning Qing immediately wanted to check it out. What if he encountered a large field of high-grade divine herbs? No one here would be courteous with you. Taking out an appearance-changing mask and changing his appearance to that of a fierce-looking male cultivator, Ning Qing quickly rushed over. After more than 10 breaths, Ning Qing stopped. Dozens of cultivators had already arrived at this place. Most likely, like Ning Qing, these cultivators came over after sensing the spatial fluctuations. What appeared in front of Ning Qing was a huge entrance to a concealed defensive array formation. The entrance to the concealed defensive array formation looked broken, most likely due to an attack from the cultivators here. From the looks of it, the spatial fluctuations he felt a moment ago didn't come from a fight, but from someone attacking the defensive array formation here. As he got closer, the aura of high-grade divine grasses overflowing from the entrance grew even stronger. Obviously, this concealed defensive array formation contained many high-grade divine grasses. Ning Qing felt happy. This concealed defensive array formation hadn't been broken yet, which meant that he had arrived just in time. Everyone, keep attacking. Although this concealed defensive array formation is strong, it can only last for half an incense stick worth of time at most. A square-faced male cultivator brought out a weapon and walked up to the concealed defensive array formation before speaking up. Ning Qing's gaze swept over the square-faced male cultivator and felt a slight surprise in his heart. This person was only at the late-stage eternal realm, but the powerful aura coming from this square-faced male cultivator didn't lose out to the thin man he killed before. Ning Qing knew very well that the thin man brought by the ninth prince as cannon fodder was a genuine half-step Dao sculpting powerhouse. A late-stage eternal cultivator didn't lose out to a half-step Dao sculpting cultivator. This fellow truly was powerful. Brother Hua, wait. There are more and more people here. After we break the array formation, how will we distribute the things inside? A man in a snow-white robe stood up. When Ning Qing saw this white-robed man, his eyes narrowed again. Why were there so many experts here? This white-robed man's cultivation wasn't any weaker than the square-faced cultivator. He was another top-notch powerhouse. What surprised Ning Qing even more was that this white-robed man was also at the late-stage eternal realm. The lower one's cultivation, the stronger one's strength, and the greater one's potential. The square-faced male cultivator nodded when he heard this and said, Bai Yi is right. There are 34 people here. If they all rush in, it would be very chaotic to distribute the things. After the square-faced cultivator surnamed Hua finished speaking, his eyes swept over the rest of the cultivators. Ning Qing understood what he meant. It wasn't that the distribution of things would be chaotic, but that the more people there were, the less each person would get. At this moment, a pointy-mouthed man stood up. He smiled and saluted the white-robed male cultivator and the square-faced male cultivator before saying, although there are many people here, Elder Brother Hua and Elder Brother Chu are both powerhouses among the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. Therefore, we will naturally listen to the two sacred children's orders. Only then did Ning Qing understand. No wonder these two people had such powerful auras. It turned out to be two of the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. The Grand Essence's 12 sacred children truly didn't have an undeserved reputation. Just by looking at these two fellows, Ning Qing could imagine the power of the other 10. The cultivator surnamed Hua nodded and spoke up in a clear voice, since everyone can gather together, it's also fate. Since many of you know me, Hua Erqi and Chu Bai, I won't talk much nonsense. After we break this concealment array formation, we'll take a look at the divine grasses inside and then divide them between the two of us. Does anyone have any objections? This distribution plan looked shameless at first glance, and Ning Qing felt sure that someone would stand up and oppose it. But to Ning Qing's disappointment, not only did no one object, but everyone also shouted in agreement. Ning Qing couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The prestige of these Grand Essence's 12 sacred children was just too great. Chu Bai suddenly frowned and his gaze fell on Ning Qing. He then spoke up with a flat tone, "This friend, everyone agreed just now, but you didn't say anything. Do you not agree with Brother Hua's proposal?" After a dozen breaths, the chaos finally ended, and Ning Qing finally saw what the two black holes were. Two centipedes, hundreds of feet long, stood in front of the concealment defensive array that everyone had just opened. At the same time, a powerful demonic essence aura swept out in waves. Even if Ning Qing stood far away, he could still feel the power coming from it. These two ferocious centipedes had a humanoid face and a scarlet body. No one knew how many thick legs grew over their bodies, and each leg looked like a long blade. One of the centipedes even had a blood-stained rag hanging from the corner of its mouth. This is a human-faced poison centipede. A female cultivator called out in shock. Only then did Ning Qing discover that out of the original group of more than 30 people, only 25 remained. Just now, it had swallowed 7 or 8 eternal powerhouses with just 2 mouths. This human-faced poison centipede truly was powerful. Everyone knew about the strength of this human-faced poison centipede, but no one left this place. Behind these two poisonous centipedes was a field of divine grasses with extremely rich spiritual qi. Facing the temptation of so many divine grasses, only an idiot would leave. What's more, there were no idiots here. How could a place with so many lush divine grasses not have any other secrets? Chapter 881. After the two human-faced poison centipedes saw everyone retreat to a certain range, they didn't immediately rush up. Instead, they roared and seemed to be discussing something with each other. Although the cultivators present couldn't understand what the two poison centipedes were discussing, they understood that as long as they stayed here, the two human-faced poison centipedes would rush up in a short while. Chu Bai, who wore white robes, suddenly spoke up, "We still have 24 people here. Since everyone wants to stay here, we naturally all want the divine grasses hidden in the array formation. If we don't kill these two human-faced poison centipedes, we won't be able to obtain the divine grasses. What I mean is that everyone split into two groups. One group will deal with one human-faced poison centipede. Huarqi and I will form a group, and another 10 people." As soon as Chu Bai's words fell, 10 cultivators quickly landed beside Chu Bai and Huarqi. Ning Cheng's group of 12 didn't need to choose at all and directly came out. Some of the slower cultivators saw Chu Bai and Huarqi form a group and looked at each other in dismay. Chu Bai and Huarqi were the strongest among the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. Logically speaking, the two of them should each lead a group. But the fact was that the two of them ended up in the same group. How many fools could cultivate to the eternal realm and enter the Grand Essence mystic realm? Everyone understood that Chu Bai and Huarqi wanted to kill them with a borrowed knife. Chu Bai and Huarqi, plus 10 other powerhouses, would have no problem dealing with one human-faced poison centipede. As for the other 12 people, they didn't have any powerhouses to lead them. As such, the human-faced poison centipedes could only be killed one by one. At most, they could only delay for some time. Chu Bai wanted to stall for time. By the time they killed the first poison centipede, most of the other cultivators would have died. Then, they would free up their hands and kill the second human-faced poison centipede. In this way, not only did they kill the two poison centipedes, but they also killed the second one. The number of people who could get a share of the divine grasses would also decrease. Seeing the other group of 12 people remaining silent, Chu Bai continued with a cold voice, "This friend also said that everyone should work together and then distribute the divine grasses according to their strength. Since two human-faced poison centipedes appeared here, I believe no one would not want to work and just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor, right?" Saying that, he stared at Ning Cheng with cold eyes. Just a moment ago, it was Ning Cheng who opposed Huarqi's proposal. Seeing Chu Bai staring at Ning Cheng, some of the cultivators standing close to Ning Cheng subconsciously stepped aside. Then, a spatial vortex appeared and sucked the two into the mouth of the human-faced poison centipede. This side hadn't formed a team yet, and now that the poison centipede rushed over, they immediately lost 2 people. The remaining people immediately scattered. The 3 cultivators on the periphery didn't hesitate to launch their escape lights and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Divine grasses were good, but no matter how good they were, they needed to be alive to enjoy them. The rest of the people, including Ning Cheng, all ended up trapped by the human-faced poison centipede spatial shackles. Even if they wanted to leave, they couldn't. "Everyone, let's do our best. Otherwise, we can only wait for death." Even without Ning Cheng's orders, someone already saw the danger. Ning Cheng saw that the rest of the people didn't try to escape and chose to take action. Only then did he fully unleash his domain. At the same time, he also released a maximal flame spirit technique. At this time, Ning Cheng's maximal flame spirit technique was no longer a pseudo-spirit technique like before. Instead, it was a true space-type spirit technique. The human-faced poison centipede attacking Ning Cheng's group had just swallowed 2 people and gained the upper hand. Therefore, it was in high spirits and spat out a gray spatial vortex. Seeing that another eternal cultivator was about to be sucked into the giant mouth of the poison centipede, the surrounding space suddenly turned violent. A similar spatial collapse appeared under the human-faced poison centipede's giant mouth, and a terrifying hot aura spread out. However, as soon as this spatial collapse appeared, the spatial vortex spat out by the human-faced poison centipede kept chipping away at it. From this, one could imagine that in just a few moments, the spatial collapse brought about by Ning Cheng's maximal flame spirit technique would be completely sucked away by the spatial vortex spat out by the human-faced poison centipede. Most likely, Ning Cheng hadn't fully activated his spirit technique yet. A late-stage eternal cultivator anxiously roared at Ning Cheng, "Don't use this meaningless spirit technique. Even if you cast this spirit technique, it wouldn't cause any damage to the human-faced poison centipede." Ning Cheng didn't care about this cultivator's roar at all. If he were such an idiot, he would have already died 100 times over. A spiritual consciousness chop silently slammed into the human-faced poison centipede sea of consciousness, and the spatial vortex spat out by the human-faced poison centipede suddenly weakened. Even the eternal cultivator, who was about to be sucked into the vortex's giant mouth, managed to escape in a hurry. While the cultivator was still in shock, a terrifying flaming spatial collapse exploded under the human-faced poison centipede's head. The human-faced poison centipede screamed as the maximal flame spirit technique blew a hole in its chin, and black blood fell down like rain. The moment Ning Cheng's maximal flame spirit technique exploded, the human-faced poison centipede also forced the spiritual consciousness chop out of its sea of consciousness. The cultivators in the same group as Ning Cheng, how could they not understand Ning Cheng's strength at this time? Feeling confident, they immediately went all out. Even if Ning Cheng angered the human-faced poison centipede and caused it to erupt with even more violent attacks, the battle was no longer one-sided. All kinds of spirit techniques and spells erupted. Ning Cheng's sea of consciousness had already suffered a blow from the spiritual consciousness chop, and Ning Cheng's maximal flame spirit technique had also injured the human-faced poison centipede sea of consciousness. Even if it started a riot, it would only last for a short period. As long as they could survive this period, they could gain the upper hand. No one knew that Ning Cheng had used a spiritual consciousness attack. But everyone knew that they had to survive this period. Ning Cheng only occasionally used one or two maximal flame spirit techniques during the fight. He only used the traceless spear pattern to deal with the human-faced poison centipede. The human-faced poison centipede had many means of attack. In addition to the poisonous mist blades, its blade-like feet, which were akin to spirit artifacts, would explode every time it collided with a cultivator's spirit technique. However, the human-faced poison centipede's most powerful attack was its spatial vortexes. Once someone got caught in the spatial vortexes of the human-faced poison centipede, they would end up in the mouth of the human-faced poison centipede. Ning Cheng didn't use any killing moves. Instead, he constantly used the spiritual consciousness chop to launch sneak attacks. Once someone got caught in the spatial vortexes of the human-faced poison centipede, he would immediately use the spiritual consciousness chop. Every time the human-faced poison centipede's sea of consciousness suffered an attack, its spatial vortexes would suddenly stagnate. At this time, Ning Cheng's long spear would inevitably arrive and rescue the cultivator caught in it. This made the human-faced poison centipede extremely angry. Although it didn't let Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness chop enter its sea of consciousness, Ning Cheng's actions had seriously affected its strength. At every critical moment, it had to let go of its prey. This kind of grievance made it want to rush to Ning Cheng's side and swallow him whole. After a long time, the cultivators in Ning Cheng's group started to see the problem. The reason why their group could gain the upper hand, and none of the 7 people had fallen so far, was all thanks to Ning Cheng. As long as Ning Cheng didn't fall, none of them could get swept away by the human-faced poison centipede. As for the poison blades on their bodies, after the human-faced poison centipede died, they would have plenty of time to detoxify it. In the end, among the 7 people, 2 people were assigned to protect Ning Cheng, while the rest focused on attacking the human-faced poison centipede with all their might. No matter how powerful the human-faced poison centipede's corporeal body was, or how powerful its spatial vortexes were, with Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness chop sneak attacking it from the side, it couldn't exert its full strength. In a one-on-one fight, Ning Cheng's current spiritual consciousness chop couldn't do anything to the human-faced poison centipede. But now was not a one-on-one fight. As long as Ning Cheng could contain the human-faced poison centipede's maximum lethality, someone else would go and kill the human-faced poison centipede. Similar to what everyone expected, in less than half an hour, the human-faced poison centipede's rampage weakened. At this time, Ning Cheng didn't even need to use the spiritual consciousness chop, the others could easily suppress the human-faced poison centipede. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, the human-faced poison centipede let out a roar, and a black-faced cultivator slammed it to the ground, unable to get up again. Chapter 882. The 7 people on Ning Cheng's side couldn't believe that the human-faced poison centipede had died. Except for Ning Cheng, most of the 7 people had suffered some injuries. But injuries and deaths were two completely different things. 7 people had killed a human-faced poison centipede, and only a few of them had suffered some injuries. It was simply incredible. Looking at the celestial essence explosions and spirit techniques in the distance, the people in Ning Cheng's group finally determined that their group had completed their task. They only needed to wait for the divine grasses to be distributed. They only have 7 people left. A female cultivator spoke up in shock. Everyone looked over and saw that only 7 people remained. The 2 people with the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children had lost 5 people in the fight against the human-faced poison centipede. One had to know that apart from the 3 people who had escaped, only 2 cultivators had died in the human-faced poison centipede. In fact, the 2 cultivators hadn't even started fighting when they were swallowed. The cultivator who said that Ning Cheng's spirit technique was useless took the initiative to bow in front of Ning Cheng and apologize. I didn't know that this fellow cultivator was so strong. I had eyes but failed to see and spoke nonsense. I hope this Dao friend can forgive me. This poison centipede is up to Dao friend to decide how to distribute it. Although Ning Cheng didn't show any outstanding strength, as long as they weren't fools, they understood that their victory had something to do with Ning Cheng. This kind of unseen means was the most frightening one. Offending a powerhouse like Ning Cheng, who was almost as strong as the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children, was the act of an idiot. Moreover, the remaining people also knew that the reason why the human-faced poison centipede swallowed 2 people in their group was because Ning Cheng deliberately didn't take action. Because of the 2 people facing the human-faced poison centipede's attack, one wanted to run away, while the other wanted to join the other group. Ning Cheng smiled. This time, we managed to kill the human-faced poison centipede because of our joint efforts. No one could have won by relying on one person. The strength of the 7 of us is the same, and there's no difference in strength. As for this human-faced poison centipede, I don't plan to take it. You can divide it among yourselves. After saying that, Ning Cheng's gaze swept over the faces of the other 6 people. Ning Cheng's current appearance was that of a fierce fellow. Therefore, when his cold gaze swept over them, the other 6 people felt a chill in their hearts. The 6 people understood Ning Cheng's implication. That is, don't reveal my means to others. I don't like it. If others ask, then we'll all do the same, we'll work together. Not to mention that Ning Cheng did not want the human-faced poison centipede, the 6 of them naturally felt happy in their hearts. The value of the human-faced poison centipede was not low to begin with, and with the rings in its stomach, its value was even higher. Although the 6 of them did not understand why Ning Cheng did not want the poisonous centipede, but no one would refuse such a good thing. The 6 people quickly distributed the things on the poison centipede's body before watching Chu Bai's group of 7 fight the human-faced poison centipede with Ning Cheng. No one went up to help. Since this was something that had been agreed upon, no one would look for trouble for no reason. Looking at Chu Bai and Hua Erqi's group besieging the human-faced poison centipede, Ning Cheng gained a new understanding of the spiritual consciousness chop. No wonder such a powerful spiritual sense cultivation method was so attractive. His team could quickly kill the human-faced poison centipede without causing too much damage. Obviously, it was not because of his strength, but because of his spiritual consciousness chop. He didn't let the other 6 people talk about it, not because he was afraid of revealing his strength, but because of his spiritual consciousness spirit technique. At the same time, another human-faced poison centipede swallowed another cultivator. Huarqi's octagonal sledgehammer smashed into the human-faced poison centipede's head. The human-faced poison centipede finally exhausted itself and fell to the ground. Following that, several weapons slammed into the human-faced poison centipede on the ground, killing it instantly. After killing the human-faced poison centipede, only 6 people remained in Chu Bai's group. Apart from Chu Bai and Huarqi, who suffered minor injuries, the other 4 all suffered severe injuries. After the 6 people distributed the human-faced poison centipede, Chu Bai glanced at Ning Cheng and spoke with a faint tone, "It turns out that the real powerhouse is in your group. You guys are much stronger than my group." Although he said that, his gaze fell on Ning Cheng. He suspected that Ning Cheng was the real powerhouse. Ordinary cultivators, who would dare to ignore the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. Ning Cheng spoke up unhurriedly, "Everyone in my group did their best. Unlike the others, who only used half of their strength." Chu Bai and Huarqi's expressions immediately turned ugly. Ning Cheng's words clearly mocked the 2 of them for not going all out. In fact, it was indeed the case. If they had gone all out, at most 2 out of the 12 people would have died. If Ning Cheng's group hadn't already dealt with the poison centipede, they would have lost 1 or 2 more people before the battle would have ended. Ning Cheng's words had stirred up quite a bit of discord, causing the surviving cultivators in Chu Bai's group to immediately take a few steps back in vigilance. If Ning Cheng hadn't said those words, everyone wouldn't have thought of it. But as soon as Ning Cheng said it, the cultivators in Chu Bai's and Huarqi's group immediately thought of some problems during the fight. What's more, their group had 2 members from the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. Yet, they suffered such heavy injuries. How could they not raise suspicions? Huarqi suddenly gave a cold snort. "Who did you say didn't contribute?" Ning Cheng spoke up calmly, "I said I didn't contribute. Didn't you see that I suffered the lightest injuries in my group? Is there anyone else like me who didn't contribute and feels guilty?" Even an idiot knew that Ning Cheng was talking about Chu Bai and Huarqi. Ning Cheng didn't suffer any injuries at all. In fact, Chu Bai and Huarqi suffered the lightest injuries. Chu Bai didn't wait for Huarqi to speak and quickly spoke up, "The human-faced poison centipede is gone. Everyone, let's grab the divine grasses. Whoever grabs them can keep them." After saying that, he rushed in first. He knew that almost no one stood on their side at this time. Therefore, he wanted to grab the divine grasses and leave as soon as possible. As soon as Chu Bai moved, the rest of the people immediately forgot about everything else and rushed in. Ning Cheng activated the twin wings of the heavenly clouds and rushed into the broken concealment array formation before Chu Bai. As soon as he entered the concealment array formation, a more intense aura of divine grasses filled the air. Each divine herb garden was neatly arranged, and each divine herb garden was protected by a crystal array formation. Except for a few medicinal gardens with broken array formations, most of the medicinal gardens had intact array formations. If one wanted to obtain these divine grasses, they would have to continue to break the array formations. Every cultivator who came in understood the reason in an instant. Almost at the same time, these cultivators rushed towards the medicinal gardens with broken defensive arrays. Apparently, everyone had the same idea. That is, they wanted to take away the divine grasses that didn't need to break the defensive arrays first. Ning Cheng was the only one among the 13 people who didn't rush in. The medicinal gardens with broken array formations only contained low-level divine grasses. What he wanted were high-grade divine grasses. The divine grasses here were protected by defensive arrays, which was the best for Ning Cheng. Unlike other cultivators, Ning Cheng's attainments in the Tao of arrays surpassed his cultivation. The defensive arrays here weren't particularly complicated. For him, it would only take him a few minutes to enter each defensive array. If he wanted to attack them, even if several people joined forces, it might take him an incense stick worth of time or even longer. Ning Qing also rushed towards a medicinal garden. But this time, he rushed towards a high-grade divine herb garden. Just as the other cultivators finished looting the divine grasses in the medicinal gardens with broken defensive arrays, Ning Qing also broke the defensive array of this high-grade divine herb garden. Hundreds of various high-grade divine grasses appeared in front of Ning Qing. But Ning Qing didn't dig them up one by one. Instead, he threw down a few array flags and moved the entire medicinal garden into the true spirit world. I didn't expect this friend to be a spirit array master, hee. Hua Erqi saw Ning Qing put away a high-grade divine herb garden, and his eyes flashed with jealousy. By this time, everyone had already looted the medicinal gardens with broken array formations. The other dozen people looked at Ning Qing in shock, just like Hua Erqi. Cultivators who could enter the Grand Essence mystic realm naturally wouldn't be weak. However, this strength mostly referred to cultivation. As for the Tao of arrays, there weren't many who were as strong as Ning Qing. Only a few people could match Ning Qing in the Tao of arrays. Seeing that Chu Bai and Hua Erqi didn't continue to attack the rest of the medicinal gardens, the others also stopped. No one was stupid enough to attack the medicinal gardens. Now that the defensive array formations were broken, everyone would rush up and attack the medicinal gardens. Chu Bai also came over and cupped his fists towards Ning Qing. Dao friend has some skills. This medicinal garden not only has a guardian beast but also an array formation. Presumably, it was arranged by an ancient peerless powerhouse. Ning Qing interrupted Chu Bai's words, "What do you want to say? If there's nothing else, don't delay me from digging the divine grasses." Chu Bai gave a hollow laugh. "What I mean is, now that the two human-faced poison centipedes are dead, we only have 13 people left. Why don't we discuss how to break the array formations here?" Ning Qing sneered. What did he mean by breaking the array formations here? To put it bluntly, he wanted him to quickly break the array formations here and then distribute the divine grasses among everyone. Very good. Hearing Ning Qing say the word "very good," Chu Bai felt happy and thought that this fellow truly feared him and Hua Erqi. But Ning Qing continued, "I won't disturb your distribution. You can take your time and don't pay any attention to me." After saying that, Ning Qing's figure flashed and landed next to another high-grade divine grasses defensive array. Chu Bai's face turned livid with anger, and his tone lost its previous warmth. "This friend, do you want to eat it alone?" Ning Qing raised his hand, and the long spear fell into his palm. A powerful domain's imposing aura spread out, and he stared at Chu Bai with a cold gaze. "Are you deaf, or have you lost your mind? Before entering this place, everyone said that it's up to their own abilities to snatch. Could it be that your face is your butt? Your words are the same as your fart, they can be exchanged. You're looking for death." Chu Bai was one of the weakest among the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children. But he was also the one who cared about his face the most. He usually wore white robes and looked elegant. How could he bear Ning Qing's mockery of him? With a wave of his hand, a white shadow tore through the air and arrived. Chu Bai's weapon was a piece of white silk. Even a full-circle eternal cultivator wouldn't fare well against this white silk. Ning Qing didn't care about Chu Bai's attack at all. Instead, he said to the others, "There are 10 or 20 medicinal gardens here. I suggest that everyone form a temporary team to attack the medicinal garden's defensive array. Don't be like this idiot." While speaking, Ning Qing's long spear shot out spear patterns one after another. Just like Chu Bai's white shadow, it also crossed the space between the two. Ning Qing hadn't asked for anything from the human-faced poison centipede before because of this moment. He had put in the most effort in the fight outside, but he didn't even want to share the loot. At this time, if someone joined forces with Chu Bai and Hua Erqi to deal with him, it would be too shameless. When Ning Qing's voice fell, the spear patterns and the white shadow created by Chu Bai's white silk had already collided. Chu Bai felt his domain being suppressed by Ning Cheng's domain. At the same time, the spear patterns that collided with the white silk suddenly split apart. The spear patterns looked like planets exploding, and a majestic momentum crushed everything in its path. Chapter 883. He was definitely not a match for this cultivator in front of him. That was the only thought in Chu Bai's mind after their attacks collided. Chu Bai immediately retreated the moment his domain shattered. He hoped that Ning Cheng would not take the opportunity to chase after him. Ning Cheng didn't chase after Chu Bai, however, the power from the backlash caused his dantian to churn and his sea of consciousness to experience a tearing pain. It almost caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. After completely removing the backlash, Chu Bai looked at Ning Cheng in a daze. Where did this cultivator come from? How could he be so powerful? The power of this domain wasn't any weaker than a half-step Dao modeling. Moreover, it wasn't a soft half-step Dao modeling. He ranked 11th among the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children, but he clearly wasn't a match for this cultivator in front of him. With the strength of this cultivator in front of him, even among the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children, he would rank in the top 3. In fact, none of the Grand Essence's 12 sacred children could be his opponent. The few cultivators who wanted to come forward and join forces to deal with Ning Cheng immediately stopped. Even Hua Erqi's expression changed a few times, but he didn't say anything. Although Chu Bai was weaker than him, Ning Cheng didn't want to offend such a powerhouse. At this time, he was almost sure that Ning Cheng was a secret disciple cultivated by a large academy. I'll stick to what I said earlier. Everyone agreed that there are many spirit herb gardens here. Whoever manages to get their hands on them will get to keep them. If anyone dares to disturb me and rob the spiritual herb garden again, I will not stop. Ning Cheng stared at Chu Bai and gave a cold snort. He didn't bother with Chu Bai and turned around to land in front of a high-grade spiritual medicine garden. He then raised his hand and continuously threw out array flags. Without Chu Bai and Hua Erqi stepping forward, the other cultivators naturally wouldn't step forward. Seeing Ning Cheng start to break the array, the rest of the people quickly formed a team and also started to break the array. The only difference was that Ning Cheng used array flags to break through the array, while the rest of the cultivators used violence to break through the array. At the beginning, Ning Cheng still had a few minutes to break through the array, but as time went on, his speed of breaking through the array was getting faster and faster. While the others were teaming up to blast open a herb garden, he had already broken through the defense arrays of 5 herb gardens. Every time Ning Cheng broke open the defensive array of the medicine garden, he would also take out the entire medicine garden. Although everyone was jealous of Ning Cheng's speed, but no one dared to come forward to snatch it. As Ning Cheng broke through the 7th high-grade divine herb garden, all the high-grade divine herb gardens disappeared, leaving only some low-grade divine herb gardens. After an incense stick worth of time, Ning Cheng finally managed to break through all the low and mid-level divine herb gardens, and he alone obtained more than 80% of them. Everyone divided up the divine herb garden, but no one left. Not even Ning Cheng left. The divine grasses here were so lush, and there were even 2 formidable human-faced poison centipedes. Everyone knew that there must be a top-grade god spiritual source here. In fact, after all the medicine gardens were snatched away, traces of rich god spiritual chi fluctuations appeared at the location of the high-grade god grass garden. Spiritual consciousness couldn't penetrate it at all. This should be the source of the growth of the divine grasses. Everyone, let's attack together. Hua Erqi said as he pointed to the source of the fluctuation of the divine spiritual energy. He did not say anything about the distribution. With Ning Cheng here, wanting to eat a meal without paying was absolutely impossible. Therefore, everyone brought out their weapons and attacked. Ning Cheng also brought out his long spear. More than a dozen people attacked this place, and in just a few minutes, a loud explosion erupted. The entire ground collapsed, and an endless abyss-like empty world appeared in front of everyone's spiritual consciousness. A strong fishy smell rushed over, and Ning Cheng was the first to discover that something was wrong. There was indeed an extremely rich god spiritual qi below. At the same time, there was also a sleeping human-faced poison centipede. The violent explosion just now had directly woken up this poison centipede. The poison centipede let out a hiss and raised its entire head. The poison centipede hadn't moved yet, but the terrifying aura oppressed everyone, making it difficult for them to breathe. Everyone immediately felt that something was wrong. This poison centipede had only raised its head, but half of its body was already more than 1,000 feet long. One could say that if this poison centipede fully stretched out, it could easily encircle half of the medicinal abyss. An extremely terrifying spatial vortex rushed out, and 4 cultivators, who couldn't retreat in time, got sucked away by this spatial vortex. They didn't even have time to scream before they died. Ning Cheng had already discovered the horror of this poison centipede, and he immediately retreated. Even so, when the spatial vortex swept over, he felt a terrifying suction force. Moreover, this poison centipede had yet to wake up. Once this human-faced poison centipede fully woke up, how terrifying would it be? Ning Cheng crazily wielded the twin wings of the heavenly clouds and escaped far away. Not only Ning Cheng, but everyone here also started to escape in a frenzy. The human-faced poison centipede soon discovered that something was wrong with the situation. Its medicine garden was gone, and even its 2 offspring were gone. A terrifying roar came from behind Ning Cheng, and an even more violent spatial collapse seemed to want to pull Ning Cheng back. Ning Cheng's spiritual consciousness could only feel the destruction of the world behind him as the human-faced poison centipede's maelstrom crazily swept it away. The 2 cultivators who fled in the back didn't even have the ability to resist before they disappeared into the maelstrom. Ning Cheng flew all the way, and even if he encountered some good divine grasses along the way, he didn't stop. After fleeing for a few days, when he couldn't feel the poison centipede's aura anymore, he finally landed on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. Since that terrifying poison centipede had awakened, it meant that not many of the dozen people were left. Even if Chu Bai and Hua Erqi wanted to escape, they would find it hard to do so. After arriving at this place, Ning Cheng's sense of direction had already become a little fuzzy. He was just about to feel the direction of the teleportation array when 2 pretty figures flashed through his spiritual consciousness. Qianghua. Ning Cheng almost screamed out in shock. He was too familiar with one of the figures, it was Shi Qianghua. Whether it was Shi Qianghua or not, Ning Cheng had already seen that figure, so he had to go and take a look. Ning Cheng was just about to rush over when a familiar fishy smell and a powerful suppressive aura rushed over. Ning Cheng didn't even think about it and once again crazily stimulated the twin wings of the heavenly clouds and chose a direction opposite to the 2 pretty female cultivators. That fishy smell and suppressive aura belonged to the terrifying poison centipede that had been slumbering in the past. Ning Cheng didn't expect that this poison centipede would still catch up to him after fleeing for a few days. From this, he could tell that this poison centipede had left a mark on him. Since this poison centipede had chased him to this place, then the rest of the people probably had already met their end. Maybe he was the last survivor. This time, the poison centipede had completely sobered up and was no longer in a daze like before. Ning Cheng could only feel the powerful spatial vortex constantly sucking him in. At the same time, the terrifying suppressive aura of death was also getting closer and closer, while the fishy smell was also getting heavier. Ning Cheng's heart sank to the bottom. If it continued like this, it wouldn't take long before the human-faced poison centipede's domain's imposing aura would suppress him. Then, the spatial vortex would suck him into the poison centipede's belly. At this moment, Ning Cheng felt some regret in his heart. He should have brought out the starry sky wheel. With the starry sky wheel, he could have slowly searched for the imprint on his body. Ning Qing escaped as fast as he could, and many cultivators saw a 10,000-foot-long human-faced poison centipede chasing after Ning Qing. No one dared to stand in front of the poison centipede at this time. As the poison centipede chased after some of the cultivators who couldn't escape in time, the poison centipede directly sucked them into its mouth. However, the poison centipede's main target was Ning Qing. As long as the other cultivators escaped to a certain range, the poison centipede would no longer care about them. All the cultivators that the poison centipede passed by, looked at Ning Qing fleeing in front of them and the poison centipede chasing after him in shock. Who the hell was this person? What did he do to anger the heavens? How did he provoke such a terrifying spirit beast? Feeling the human-faced poison centipede getting closer and closer, Ning Qing knew that if he didn't find a way, this day next year would be his death anniversary. Spiritual consciousness chop, dark consciousness storm, time wheel, sunset's twilight, none to depend on. Ning Qing ran through all the spirit techniques he knew and found that none of them could stop this human-faced poison centipede from chasing after him. It wasn't that his spirit techniques weren't good enough, but his strength wasn't good enough. Maybe the 5-colored star splitter arrow could stop it for a moment or two. But if he really brought out the 5-colored star splitter arrow, he would truly die. The strength of this human-faced poison centipede definitely couldn't be locked down by the 5-colored star splitter arrow's murderous aura. Just like other spirit techniques, it wasn't that the 5-colored star splitter arrow couldn't stop it, but that his strength wasn't good enough. If he were a Dao sculpting cultivator, he could have killed this poison centipede with a single arrow. Unfortunately, he wasn't a Dao sculpting cultivator. The huge gap in strength couldn't be made up for with any means. The fact that the 5-colored star splitter arrow could stop this poison centipede for a moment or two referred to the situation after the arrow was shot, not the situation before it was shot. The powerful suction from the spatial vortex had already affected Ning Qing's speed. Ning Qing didn't dare to think about it anymore. He turned around and stopped. Burning his essence blood, he grabbed the 7 Bridges Realm book and swung it with both hands. 7 Bridges Spirit Technique, the first bridge of coping. A cold and gloomy aura gushed out from the Realm book, and a huge stone steel blocked the suction force of the spatial vortex. Then, the words First Bridge of Coping slowly appeared on the huge stone steel, and a faint pale white stone arch bridge slowly emerged behind the stone steel. Chapter 884. As soon as Ning Qing left, the already vague first bridge of coping turned even more blurry. As the human-faced poison centipede rushed over, there was only a slight shattering sound before the first bridge of coping disappeared without a trace. Looking at the human-faced poison centipede chasing after him once again, Ning Qing felt relieved. Bringing out the first bridge of coping, even with the help of the 7 Bridges Realm book, consumed an unimaginable amount of energy. Fortunately, he no longer needed to consume celestial essence and spiritual consciousness to escape. Chasing Bull only needed to control the starry sky wheel and burn a lot of spirit crystals. After handing over the starry sky wheel to Chasing Bull to control, Ning Qing carefully observed the human-faced poison centipede chasing after them. After half a day, Ning Qing finally felt relieved. Although the human-faced poison centipede was fast, the starry sky wheel wasn't any slower than the human-faced poison centipede. This made Ning Qing feel relieved. As long as the human-faced poison centipede couldn't catch up to the starry sky wheel, the starry sky wheel would eventually lose the human-faced poison centipede. Returning to the cabin, Ning Qing remembered the figure that he had seen before the human-faced poison centipede chased after him. That figure was too similar to Shi Qianghua, it was almost the same. But now that Ning Qing thought about it, he felt that it should not be Qianghua. What was Qianghua's cultivation when she and Luofei separated? In such a short time, Qianghua shouldn't be able to become an eternal cultivator and enter the grand essence mystic realm. Even if he used divine crystals to cultivate, it would be impossible for his cultivation to improve so quickly. Whether it was or not, he had to find this female cultivator and see for himself. Putting these things aside for the time being, Ning Qing no longer paid any attention to the human-faced poison centipede chasing after him. Taking off all his clothes, he used his spiritual consciousness to constantly search his body. 2 hours later, Ning Qing had to burn all the clothes on his body. He couldn't find any other marks at all, so he could only burn his clothes and continue running. It seemed that the human-faced poison centipede would not stop until it killed Ning Qing. Even after chasing him for a full month, it still did not stop. Just as Ning Qing expected, after a month, the human-faced poison centipede started to fall behind the starry sky wheel. Within a month, Ning Qing had already restored his cultivation. Unfortunately, even if he recovered his cultivation, with the human-faced poison centipede chasing after him, he wouldn't be able to find the divine herbs. Master, this fellow must have gone mad. I've already burned 500,000 god crystals, but he's still chasing me. That idiot, doesn't it know that it can't catch up? Seeing Ning Qing coming over, Chasing Bull spoke up in anger. It could see from the astrolabe of the starry sky wheel that the human-faced poison centipede was still behind. Ning Qing smiled and took out a bunch of array discs before handing them to Chasing Bull. In a while, let me control the starry sky wheel. You just need to keep throwing these array discs behind you. Ning Qing had given Chasing Bull all the obstructing array discs he had refined. Although none of these array discs could stop the human-faced poison centipede for even a breath, the real purpose of these array discs was not to block it, but to prevent the human-faced poison centipede from chasing after Ning Qing. As Chasing Bull threw out one array disc after another, the human-faced poison centipede's speed slowed down. This was not because of the array discs, but because there were too many array discs along the way. The human-faced poison centipede's speed could not be maximized. Moreover, under Ning Qing's control, the starry sky wheel's speed rose by a large margin. Under such circumstances, Ning Qing quickly threw away the human-faced poison centipede. A day later, Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness no longer had any trace of the human-faced poison centipede's aura. To prevent the human-faced poison centipede from chasing after him, Ning Qing continued to control the starry sky wheel for half a month before stopping in the depths of a stone forest. The reason why he stopped here was that Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness seemed to have become mesmerized by this place. Ning Qing also felt the vastness of the grand essence mystic realm. He controlled the starry sky wheel to fly for a month or two but didn't find himself going in circles. Putting away the starry sky wheel, Ning Qing landed in the middle of the stone forest. This stone forest looked very strange, with steep stone peaks of different heights. The tallest ones were hundreds or even thousands of feet high, while the shortest ones were only a few centimeters high. Standing in the middle of the stone forest, Ning Qing felt like he had come to a bamboo forest full of bamboo shoots. Tall and short bamboo shoots sprouted everywhere. There was nothing else in this stone forest except for the stone peaks. Ning Qing didn't even see a single blade of grass. It stood to reason that this place should have very sparse spiritual qi. However, Ning Qing could feel the rich spiritual qi in this place, which made it an extremely suitable place for cultivation. Ning Qing moved quickly because there wasn't a single divine grass in this place. In the grand essence mystic realm, a place with such rich spiritual qi, no one would believe it if they didn't have any divine grasses. Ning Qing stretched out his spiritual consciousness and carefully searched around but couldn't find even a single divine grass. Soon, Ning Qing felt a cold yin aura in addition to the rich spiritual qi in this place. Because he cultivated the Seven Bridges spirit technique, Ning Qing wasn't a stranger to the cold yin aura. However, he didn't like this aura and didn't want to stay here. Just as he was about to leave this place, Ning Qing found something wrong. He couldn't get out. His spiritual consciousness couldn't sweep through this stone forest, which meant that there was no direction in this place. Ning Qing calmed down and activated the twin wings of the heavenly clouds. Soon, he landed again. The forbidden flight restriction in this stone forest was even stronger than the one in the Grand Essence Ruins public square. Therefore, he couldn't fly to a higher place. Moreover, flying through the stone forest still gave him no direction. Ning Qing finally understood that this place was a natural maze. He could enter the natural maze, but he couldn't get out. Ning Qing didn't panic even though he was in the maze. He was a spirit array master to begin with. Therefore, even if he didn't have any array patterns, he should still be able to get out of this maze. Unfortunately, he didn't lead that stupid poisonous centipede here. Otherwise, that poisonous centipede would have been trapped by this maze and couldn't escape. 5 days later, Ning Qing stopped running around like a headless fly. His knowledge of the Tao of arrays couldn't be used in this place. Even after 5 days, he couldn't even touch the edges of this maze. The only thing he could guess was that this array was a natural maze. Kacha, another pile of human bones, was trampled under Ning Qing's feet. Over the past few days, he had stepped on bones more than once or twice in this stone forest. Under normal circumstances, whenever he stepped on a skeleton, he would first check if there were any rings on the skeleton. If there were any rings, he would collect them and then continue looking for the array entrance. After a few days, he managed to pick up 2 rings. But this time, the skeleton he stepped on made Ning Qing stop. The skeleton he stepped on was a male cultivator. The robes worn by the skeleton looked gorgeous and exquisite. Moreover, they were still intact. Not even a speck of dust could stick to them. From this, one could tell that this set of robes was also a top-grade weapon. What made Ning Qing surprised was not the clothes, but the bones of this person. The skeleton on the ground exuded a faint golden glow. There was even a faint Tao charm circulating around it. Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness carefully swept through the skeleton once more, confirming that this cultivator had truly fallen. A moment later, Ning Qing's gaze fell on the ring on the cultivator's hand. Even Ning Qing had never seen such an exquisite ring. But the bone on the finger gave off a faint blue gem-like glow. It looked like a star in the blue sky. Ning Qing bent down and wanted to take off the ring. Just when his hand was about to touch the ring, a faint voice arrived, "I'm not dead yet, and you want to snatch my things?" Ning Qing was startled. He quickly stepped back and opened his hand. The long spear fell into his palm. "You don't have to worry. I'm not a threat to you. My essence spirit is extremely weak. I used a secret method to fake my essence spirit's death. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have woken up." The skeleton's faint voice came out again. Ning Qing's spiritual consciousness swept out and felt a trace of essence spirit fluctuations. A cultivator who hadn't fallen yet was lying here. Ning Qing felt embarrassed to pick up someone else's ring. Even if this cultivator knew that he wanted to pick up the ring, this cultivator couldn't resist. He couldn't do such a thing. Seeing that Ning Qing didn't take the next step, the skeleton seemed to feel slightly relieved and said, "Let's talk about it, okay? If you save me, I'll tell you the way out. Of course, I don't know if you can get out or not. I don't want you to say that I lied to you." Feeling that this skeleton spoke the truth, Ning Qing immediately felt a favorable impression in his heart. If this skeleton said that he had a way to get out, then let him save him first. Then, he would use another method to restrain each other. Seeing Ning Qing not speaking, the skeleton thought that Ning Qing wanted his ring. Therefore, he didn't want it and continued, "After entering the Grand Essence Lost Stone Forest, the chance of survival is very small. Since you can come here, it should be because the Grand Essence Mystic Realm opened again, right? You can say that no one here knows how to get out of the Grand Essence Lost Stone Forest except for me. If you want my ring, I can give it to you. In fact, I don't have many good things in my ring." Ning Qing had to admit that the skeleton was right. He asked in doubt, "Did you come in the last time the Grand Essence Mystic Realm opened?" "Last time?" The skeleton repeated the words and quieted down. After a few minutes, he sighed and said, "I've been sleeping here for 60,000 years. 60,000 years ago, I escaped to this place with serious injuries. I wandered around here for tens of thousands of years and found many rings. That's how I came to know about this place. It's just that although the spiritual chi here is rich, I can't absorb it for cultivation. You can see that there are no divine grasses around, and you can understand what's going on. When Ning Cheng heard this, he immediately tried to absorb a trace of the spiritual chi. But then he stopped. Not being able to absorb the spiritual chi wasn't targeted at him. He could absorb the spiritual chi here and turn it into his own cultivation. Most likely, it was caused by the mysterious yellow formless cultivation method, but Ning Cheng didn't say it out loud. The skeleton continued, after I consumed all my resources, I could only use a secret method to fake my death. If no one touches me, I might never wake up. Ning Cheng took out 2 Bodhi cauldron heaven buds and a pile of spirit crystals and threw them to the skeleton. I don't have any medicinal pills. But here are 2 high-grade divine grasses that can help you recover your corporeal body. This skeleton had only lost his muscles and had a weak essence spirit. Moreover, his corporeal body wasn't destroyed because he still had his bones. The Bodhi cauldron heaven buds were high-grade divine grasses that specialized in restoring corporeal bodies. Moreover, with a pile of spirit crystals, Ning Cheng believed that he could recover quickly. The skeleton grabbed the 2 divine grasses and the pile of spirit crystals in a daze. He didn't know what to do. He had never seen a person like Ning Cheng. Without even discussing the conditions, Ning Cheng took out high-grade divine grasses to help him recover his corporeal body. He knew about the preciousness of the Bodhi cauldron heaven buds. It was no less valuable than an ordinary Tao fruit. Even in the Grand Essence mystic realm, it was rare. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.